Jill, has anyone signed up to be heard?
Gianna Linday. Gianna.
Jenna, do you want to speak now or during the workshop?
When will the workshop be?
Right, as soon as we get through with this.
Okay.
The very next thing.
That's fine.
I think that would, okay, thank you.
I'll defer to that.
Okey doke. All right, item 4, joint workshop with the Bandera Economic Development Corporation. Tony Kuntz, Christine Morse, Jared Wilcox, Alan Atterbury, and myself are present to represent the EDC, as well as all of the council members for this joint workshop. So, the way it turned out, and I think this may be partly my fault for the EDC, is that there was no clear direction given to when or how these applications should be submitted to the EDC for funding from our promotional funds. So as of right now, the only one we have is from the BBA. Janet, did you want to speak to that, or do you want to?
That, I can. I have diligently watched for deadlines on the EDC. I did, and also an updated application. They change off and on, and so I wasn't really sure whether I should use an older application. Partially, it's, I just didn't go ahead and do one. But in addition to all of that, we Bandera Pro Rodeo received funds for 2020 from the EDC for Memorial Day weekend. And we had those funds. So we had no intention of submitting an application for Memorial Day weekend. In the meantime, we then stepped into the position of having to pay for the Longhorns on Labor Day weekend. And that is what I would be seeking funds from the EDC for. I've already gotten the proposals and the cost and all of that. And I apologize because I've had this and I should have given it to EDC. Again, it's not of time is of the essence for me in a sense because we do have several months between now and Labor Day, but it will be essential for us to be able to go forward with those Longhorns on Labor Day to seek money from the EDC for that. And I will be more than glad. It's a little interesting too because we've never done it before, so I'm not even really certain how to put in all of the economic funds that have gone to it because I haven't ever done it before. Right now, the Longhorns themselves are going to be about $5,600. Then you add another $180 for boarding and $200. No, it's not that much. It's $80. It's like $220 total for the hay. Otherwise, we basically just take care of the pins and all of that. The overnight boarding is more expensive, but we've already gotten that secured. The insurance is an additional. Right now, he has not given it to me because we got insurance for last year, thinking we would be doing it last year, and then we didn't go forward with the parade last year. And I have to actually get a new insurance policy effective before that event in September because it runs out right before. My insurance policy runs out right before Labor Day, and so I'm not sure what it's going to be. We frankly did find an insurer that works really carefully with us, and the expense has not been nearly what you would anticipate it to be, and still there's complete coverage. So that's what I will be doing, and I apologize. I really tried hard to get it done today, and I just didn't get around to it.
Jenna, there's no need to apologize because I said it wasn't clear, and that's my responsibility. But of course, we had no secretary, we had no anybody, so and I apologize to you again. But we touched this briefly at a EDC meeting last night, and it was sort of thrown out there that we could continue accepting applications. And of course, we can make no decisions here tonight because it is a workshop setting, but I believe that the entire room would probably agree that because of the circumstances and because of COVID and everything getting all messed up, that instead of having these due in October, even though it's not here, get it in as soon as you can and we can consider it.
I will do that. I'll try to do it tomorrow. I think I can.
Now, that's me speaking, and I'm not speaking for the board as a whole. I'm speaking just for myself as the president, and I don't see an objection coming from anyone here that's on the board So,
Yeah, I think that's fair. I know,
I think it's fair.
from the chamber, I know you guys took over last year, and there was a lot of confusing stuff happening with whether we were gonna get to do it or not do it, and thank God you guys took over that for us.
And,
But,
you
yeah.
know, I made sure that it was okay with the chamber because, you know, we said this would do 2021.
Yeah.
It's not, there again, I mean, I can
Okay.
do night hours and I just didn't force myself to do that.
well, since Jenna is present tonight, let's skip down to the 2021 Memorial Day and the 2021 Labor Day applications that we have in our packet from
For the hot funds.
the PRCA, yes, ma'am.
And again, we have been allotted the 7,000 for 2020, but we didn't use it, of course, because we didn't have the rodeos. So that was actually awarded to us. We didn't use it. We're back again this year asking for the same amount, and that goes straight to advertising. There was an attachment budget-wise, and it said, please highlight whatever it is that where you'll be allocating these funds, and it's all advertising. We did 3 radio stations. I'm doing another effort this year to go ahead and have inserts in newspapers in surrounding towns and areas. And then also we have, of course, posters, but I've never really requested reimbursement on posters, even though I put them up all the way up to San Angelo and everything else. I know that another board member goes south to Corpus Christi, and then we try to cover the hill country as much as possible when I make that trip to San Angelo, and when they make trips otherwise. That's it.
And it's pretty much the same for the Labor Day as well, is it not?
It is. Again, I know that sounds strange, but I do allocate 2 nights for that as opposed to the 3 nights for Memorial Day. And hopefully there'll be more advertising. It really got to where it seemed like Bandera Rodeo was doing the advertising for Labor Day, even though we just initially had one of the ranch rodeos. Now we have both of them. But it looks like somebody's already put something out for Labor Day, which I'm really happy to see. The Frontier Days, it looks like that title is coming back, which is going to be good.
And if you'll notice, you have a spreadsheet in your packet. This year, the Rodeo Association is requesting $7,000 for each event. And as it's noted here, they received $3,000 last year for the women's rodeo. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So any discussion about this? Any questions for Jana? And you know, since that's all the discussion with the council, approach the EDC, please, because there's other avenues that can be funded for your event. So, and this is not a guarantee. We won't get to this until we get into the actual body of the agenda, but this is where questions are asked and answered. So if there are any questions for Jana or Jan, for
And I do want
us?
to just throw in too, that we try to be very cognizant of the fact that there are other entities out there that need assistance. So we really try to be reasonable on our requests. And we do go out of pocket on things that we don't get reimbursed for, obviously.
Yes, ma'am.
But we try not to be greedy or anything like that. And I really look at it in the sense of what we have to get to really be able to keep going.
And I want to bring to your attention also, I don't think we have it here, but Jana went to the trouble of may I call you Jana? Because I don't call her. Okay. So she went to the, I'm kind of silly now, right?
That old lady
So
over
she
there.
went to the, she went to the trouble of creating packets for every council member, and they're about this thick. It has every piece of financial information you could ever want to know. She's very thorough and very detail-oriented, and I appreciate all your work.
Well, thank you. Well, and please, everybody come. We'll have packets delivered to the city. But we really, this year, I'm trying to focus on getting as many people there as possible all three nights. We've really increased our attendance, and I'm hoping that that happens this year, even though COVID is still hanging on. It's interesting because the most objection that I get is still COVID related.
Okay.
And I'm like,
Thank you.
thank
Oh,
you.
you did have one question
Sure.
from an EDC member here.
I was gonna ask if we had extra packets. The only one I got from me is for the Cowboys on Main.
For Cowboys on Main, is all you have is what we were given, and you did receive that, did you not?
Just the Cowboys on Main is what I
So,
got.
Yeah.
so EDC, the only one we have is Cowboys on Main.
It's correct.
The
Oh.
city council has others.
These are hotel occupancy.
So these are requests for
I guess
opt
that's
outs.
why.
And so we're here as a workshop to kind of look at the balance between the two, who qualifies for which ones, and so we make sure that we make the most of our money.
And I
Thank you.
appreciate all of y'all's efforts. I really do.
And I know you were on a time limit here, so I wanted to get you moving on down the road if you need to go. And I'll let you know how it comes out with the council later, if you, unless you want to stay until it's,
I do have to leave, we actually have a board meeting, and we have a number of committees coming to do reports and everything, so am I excused?
yes, ma'am, you are.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jan.
Thank
You
you.
don't have to salute or anything, you know, just
Well, you know,
get out of here.
When I talk to the judge, I stand up, so I had to really focus on
Bye,
standing
Jan.
up.
All right, now that Cindy Beckham is here to represent the BBA, this is our joint application. This is the only one that was where the application was made to both the EDC and the city at the same time on the same application. Now, it's on the city's application, but hey, what the hey? So, Cindy,
There were two separate, one on the old EDC application and one on the city council application. They have one for each.
It's fine. I think we can handle it.
well, I only
Just
got
clarifying
Jill.
that. I turned them in at the same time.
Okay.
But they're, yeah, I turned them in at the same time, but they are two, like one's the city council and one's the EDC. So I did it properly.
I don't have, Jill, where's Jill?
I'm right there.
Where's the EDC application? Did I, have I got it, am I not seeing it?
And we had them
We
last
had, we
night.
got them last night in our packet too. We had them, I mean, how many copies do we need? We had them last night in our packet as well, so.
I'm just assuming I don't have the
had 'em in our packet.
EDC application, because why would I, but I only have the HOTS.
The numbers match up, so that's it.
Did anybody get one?
I have one.
You have one?
I have one.
Which one did you guys get?
I have
You got yours from last night? Sorry.
I put them out for the EDC.
Yeah, I got mine too.
Oh, that's why.
And you got yours?
We might need a spare.
Somebody needed one?
Been handing them out for the last month.
If you want a spare, yeah. I would-
Jill?
No?
Oh,
Got it? You found it?
Here's one, can you make a copy of them? Or?
Suzanne,
There's spares to go around, I think.
Okay.
I think there's plenty.
Well, there's gonna be one right there in that chair, because she's not here, so there's one.
That's right.
He was out.
No, it wasn't in the
People only, not the council.
Well, it's the same application, basically, with the same information. All right, Cindy, you want to come on up here and explain it to us?
Sure. You want me to? Sit up here, or what's your first?
I'm fine.
Or Virginia, what's?
Yeah, I got
Well,
it.
I have it.
You have both?
No,
Okay, they have both.
I don't need,
I don't have those.
I'm good, I'm good.
I already gave mine away, I don't need another one.
Who else needs one?
Oh my gosh, just give it here. Holy smokes.
Thank you. Okay, so this is an application for funding for Cowboys on Main.
Yes. And we'll address the EDC first. I mean, can I blend them?
Yes.
Is that allowed?
Blend.
Blend is okay?
Blend them.
Okay. So there are two separate applications, and the Cowboys on Main, and I describe it because a lot of people think that, well, let me just say, in their mind, they pick one thing or whatever they see, and they think that's Cowboys on Main. But in actuality, Cowboys on Main involves the gentleman that you see in front of the courthouse with the longhorn, the chuck wagon, and the riding wagon, plus the gunfighters who perform behind the CBB at Rattlesnake Ridge, so, and other places. So that encompasses all of them. Then plus, sometimes at the National Day of the American Cowboy in July, which will be right behind it, we also sponsor additional cowboys on the courthouse lawn to have the function, okay, different acts and so forth. So all of that is under the umbrella of Cowboys on Main. So with the EDC and the city council with the hot funds, last year, the whole target, and it's the same this year, is combined, however it needs to be split or divided or shared, a total of $15,000, okay? Every week, the Cowboys on Main perform in one function or another. They're scheduled except for January, basically. It used to be that they didn't perform January, February, but February we have Mardi Gras, we have Valentine's, we have other activities, so why keep them away if the weather's beautiful and, you know, there's something going on? So they're utilized more. Last year with COVID, just by sheer coincidence, because we were prepared to do whatever we needed to do to have the Cowboys more present. We're the Cowboy capital, gotta have Cowboys out, right? And especially the ones in front of the courthouse and the gunfighters, people ask, when's the gunfight? So they're very popular, they're asked for, people come here because of that. Last year, just by chance, we scheduled them as much as we could around the COVID activities and so forth and their own personal activities. And we utilized the full $15,000, actually $15,100, okay? And we were prepared to go above that if we had to, but because of the shortages and all. If you do the math, and you do the 300 for the gunfighters, and then 300, 111, it's 600 a week, okay? 600 a week to have our Cowboys on Main. The gunfighters for, according to Tommy, for about 18 years, had been paid $100 for the whole group. $100 for 2 performances, and their ammo and liability insurance alone was more than that, the $400 a month, okay? So this past year, we increased it to $300 per week for 2 performances. And that's only when they perform and only when they're doing, they say, no guns, no pay, okay? When they're performing, they're using ammo and all that. Gotta bring it to, it's a long story, but if you're not shooting, you're not getting paid, okay? So they're out in the public, they're doing this, they have the crowds, they have the bleachers, people come. If you do the math and you even say 50 weeks a year, 50 weeks times 600 is $30,000. That's why we're asking for $15,000. Last year, again, because of the shutdown and the closures and schedules, it came out to $15,000. So that's the financial part of why we're asking for 15, and that sounds like a lot, but in actuality, it's not.
Well, and it's broken down as 5,000 from hot tax and 10,000 from the EDC sales tax revenue, promotional funds.
And that's what it was last year, so I just followed suit with that this year.
How are you going to fund the balance of the
Well,
15,000?
With our activities, like any proceeds that we can make, sponsors from Riverfest, from market days, charitable donations, you know,
Okay.
if you know anybody, but that makes up the difference.
Okay.
So, and we're hopeful that we can make that much of a difference to keep them going.
Yes, Darcy.
So I heard you say 600 per week and then also say 300 per week. Is it total 600 per week?
And that's the 3 who are in front of the courthouse, plus I call them the troop, you know, all of the Bandera Cattle Company, the gunfighters, and many times there's up to 12 to 15 of them.
And do y'all have a contract with them that says that they have to work so many weeks per year?
Not so many, because weather permitting. So it's on a weekly basis and they're paid weekly.
So say y'all get the 15,000 and you don't spend 15,000.
Oh, we will. We have a maximum of 30,000 we're gonna spend. We will spend every bit. Let me put it right now, the fiscal year again runs from October 1 to September 30th. And we're in middle of May. And we have already, the current fiscal year, we're looking at 11,000 has already been paid out. and we still have all summer to go.
The city's hot fund allocations are based on a reimbursement basis.
Yes.
And I'm not clear, well, how did we do it last year? Did we,
It was reimbursement.
reimbursement?
And I
Okay, you
waited-
presented it to the,
Yes.
I guess,
Well,
secretary,
I
treasurer.
can't say like last year, this meeting was in January, the end of January, beginning of February, right? And so when I came, we had, because again, with different things going on, but we were okay and we were just going, we're gonna keep moving, and so
Okay.
the funds came, we continued to pay, and then at the end of September, because it was so limited, what happened during the summertime and so forth, we made it to the end of September, and then I submitted the post-event report and the paperwork, the receipts and so forth, all the QuickBooks accounting data, and that's why I say it came out to 15,100. And so that was supplied in both cases and everything.
Appreciate that. Questions? EDC?
I just have one.
Yes, Darcy?
Okay, so I'm looking at the last page on your financial income. I understand about COVID and everything last year, but all I'm seeing is a net income of 400 last year, is that correct, that y'all brought in?
Is that donations or?
Everything says 15,000, then you have minus 400 net ordinary income.
I can't recall what that was specifically.
What events were y'all able to have last year with COVID going on?
Cowboys on Main. There was no River Fest. We planned on having National Day of the American Cowboy, and I want to say it rained that weekend, and we had to cancel it.
It was threatening rain. It never rained, but we thought it was going to be a bad one.
Yeah.
So you weren't able to have any fundraisers, I guess is what I'm asking.
And then at Christmas, we were all, let's get that Christmas, and then here the rains again, and then actually the parade organizer got COVID that week, and then Santa Claus and Mrs. Claus got COVID. And then the rain was coming in, so we said, okay, I think that's an omen that we need to just stop. So,
Are you talking about the net income at the librarian, negative 400? So she got 15,000 total for Cowboys on Main, and her expenses were 15,400, so that's a negative.
yeah. That's right, there was a late,
I
thing that
just wanted
came
to
in.
make sure.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's what I'm talking about, yeah, the way it's written is confusing to me, so. Maybe you can explain to me later. I'll
Well,
take your word
and it
for
was, and I
Pluses
was
and
thinking,
minuses
thank you
and
for
the
saying that, because I thought that it was
But it
15,1,
says income,
but one of
so-
the checks, one of the $300 was late, remember the September 30th? And so it actually ended up 15,4,
Okay.
so that's what, thank you.
Okay. EDC, anybody have questions? And the-
Mayor,
Ma'am?
Karina just got a EDC application handed to her from somebody in the audience. Did you want it, or? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. This is in the court. You don't have to wait for me to say something.
It's on our list.
It
I
is.
don't have,
The writing on
we don't have a bailiff.
It's just the application to support it, right?
That's for the EDC.
Oh, it's for the.
Yeah, the writing on page, I have those, that's for the
Got it.
EDC.
Thank you.
Okay, I've already got an application from you.
That's for the EDC.
So this one's gonna be a mix also.
Oh, that was the city, okay. Girl. Okay, are we finished with Riverfest? And I don't think Cindy needs one of those. Any more questions for Cindy? Yes,
Not
ma'am.
for Cindy, but I'd like to talk in general.
Yes, ma'am.
That's okay. So, we start at the beginning of October 1, so we've had a few events that have already happened. And we go, obviously, until September 30th. So if y'all can entertain me for a second, I went down and wrote by month what events that I know that typically applies, because we didn't put out the call for economic development, and talk about whether or not they're one-day events, multi-day events, whether they qualify for EDC, promotional funding or hot tax. There's not very many, I don't think it'll take very long if you wouldn't, if that's
No,
okay
not
with
at all.
everybody. Okay, so Texas Music Fest, it's a one-day event, it's the Kiwanis fundraiser, and they have in the past asked for EDC funding for advertisement. That has already occurred in October. So I
It was
don't
in
think
March
that qualifies for
this
hot
year.
funds, right?
I don't know, because it's a Friday night event and people come to,
Saturday.
not on Friday?
I don't think that we have ever excluded one-day events from receiving promotional funds, because,
Not promotional funds, but hot tax, because one-day events do not promote heads and beds. They only are one-day events.
well, it's kind of an assumption in a way.
I'm just
And
saying that's sort of
yeah,
been
I don't
the-
think that we have actually excluded one-day events from hot funds. We'd have to go back and really look at
So
a
what's the
detailed report.
justification for giving hot funds to single-day events?
It's the
I
purpose
just
of
want, I just want a
people.
standard so we can treat
Well,
them
when
all
so,
the same.
I would imagine when people come to a late night ending event, that the chances are they may be staying overnight.
If they come from if they come from outside, if they're
Mhm.
advertising outside our
Mhm.
community.
Mhm.
And it is Buckfest, it is Hunter's Weekend, so, you know,
Yeah.
that
No, it's
brings.
No,
not.
it's
No, no.
not.
No,
This is October.
Yeah,
This is
and it
usually the
falls
third
on the-
Saturday
I
in
think she's
October.
talking
It's
about
the
one-day
Kiwanis,
events,
And
though.
it's the Texas Music Fest is the one. I'm talking
Buckfest?
about.
No,
Texas Music Fest.
the Kiwanis, it was,
But it's- oh,
they held it
it's
in
not on our
March.
list, talk about something different.
No,
I've made a
October.
list of all the events of people that have asked for money in the past by date of fiscal year.
Did they ask for that last year? I don't remember that.
They did on EDC. They
Oh.
typically do. I'm just saying,
Yeah,
because,
I'm just curious, how much did they ask for? How
um,
much do you think they're gonna ask for?
I don't know. I just
Well,
want to talk
since
about
they
the
don't
events
have
and what they
applications in front of
qualify
us,
for.
Yeah, let's just go through the list and not worry about what they asked for or what they got or anything
Yeah,
else right
because
now.
the trouble is like was mentioned earlier, the EDC never put a call out for applications. And so the cities put one out in January, and we're just now getting to it. So to me, to be fair to everybody that has been asked in the past and repeatedly asks, I think it's fair to just put them on the list, decide which one they qualify, even if it's both, determine that, and then see what's already been asked for, or what they do ask for, what kind of funds we have, and decide how we're going to allocate it out. Because to me, the way the debacle has been going, I don't think it's fair to our community. If they're organizers of events that have already happened, or that are, they usually ask for money, everybody's struggling. So if I'm wrong, just,
No,
if y'all are not into this, then just.
I
tell me.
agree, let's hop through your list real quick.
Okay, so Music Fest was the first one, so we're saying they qualify for both since it's a late night event?
Possibly, I'd say let's look in our history,
I think
Not
it's
saying-
ultimately the council's determination.
sure.
Okay, so Nightmare on Maple didn't happen, but they continually, they asked for promotion funding from the EDC.
It happened.
Oh, it did, that's right, it did happen.
I spent
It
lots
did
of
happen, my bad.
On
That one happens in October, and I don't think we've gotten an application for them. Did y'all get, is Willie or somebody, did y'all get funding last year for this? Because y'all were after the fiscal year.
I haven't charged anything in, I've kind of been.
They got approval for funding.
I'm gonna get in here.
Okay, I just think they overlap. They're, because they're right at the beginning of the year, so a lot of times, so anyway, okay, so Hunter's Barbecue Weekend is the next one. The barbecue itself, which is now called Buckfest, but we have, a pretty big weekend in the city, but it really is, the Buckfest itself is one day. Because nobody has taken over advertising for the whole weekend, for the whole city, which to me would qualify for something else.
See, I haven't taken a poll of who's staying and who's not, but there's a lot of people here.
I didn't think that was is that a requirement? That it be more than one?
So it is my theory, and what I have heard repeatedly talked about, is in order to qualify for hot funds, your goal for that is heads and beds.
Right.
And so you can pretty much assume that if it's a multi-day event that you're advertising for, you're promoting heads and beds. So like Rebecca said, if it's a late night event and somebody's coming from outside our community, they
Or-
could be staying.
Or early morning.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, so I'm just saying that.
Or early
that's what
morning,
we-
yeah. All those early morning
Rebecca and I
events
don't
I've
know anything
attended.
about that.
That really is
We're not early morning people.
almost irrelevant, isn't it?
I don't know.
Whether it's a 1 or 2 night event, because it depends on the event.
It sounds like it is. I think it's important, like as far
I
as
think
how much
Buckfest
money.
would qualify
I think at
for city.
most, this is productive if we just identify the events and figure out who we need to reach out to so we can
Okay,
move on.
okay, so Hunters, Buckfest is chamber, Veterans Day Parade, and, event on the courthouse lawn. That's also November, early November.
Are you listening, Pat?
What?
Just making sure, in case we missed something.
Veterans Day.
Oh, yeah, this is my memory, and I don't have the
about the
weeks.
parade.
Okay.
What did you say after Veterans Day?
Veterans Day, it's the parade.
After.
Bandera honors veterans.
Bandera honors veterans is what it's.
Have they ever
I
applied
didn't
those?
say anything, I said it's a parade and an event on the courthouse lawn. It's like one day, Saturday morning, not very early. December is Christmas lights. And then we also have the Jubilee and the parade that happens to kind of kick off, all of that is sort of on the same weekend. Late January, early February is the Mardi Gras parade, market days, rodeo. And then we have events in spring, during spring break that are week-long. A lot of our museums and places do that. I mean, it's an all-day thing for spring break, and that would be, but nobody's taken over or ever asked for advertising on that, so. Then, I don't have anything in April. May, Medina River cleanup, and we at the EDC have always supported that because
The
it
city
just,
too.
it really does promote our parks and recreation. The Medina, is our natural resource, that kind of thing. And then Memorial Day Parade, market on the courthouse lawn, and rodeo. June is Riverfest. July, National Day of the American Cowboy. I don't have anything for August. September is Labor Day Parade, market, and rodeo. And then all year is Cowboys on Main, and all summer, which I think is extremely important in the packets that we just got for EDC, is the Riding on the Faith. They do the Friday night rodeo starting early June. And this year, applaud to Karen, she got a national qualifier date on the books. And if you
July
want to
the
hear more from her, I think it's huge for us, especially the fact that we're calling ourselves Cowboy Capital of the World, and we haven't really had a national, like a national cowboy NFR winner, whatever, all champion or whatever, in quite some time. So the fact that we have a qualifying rodeo again, it's a youth rodeo, right, or is it full?
It is the 2022 Bowie Junior American, and it's for 19 and under.
Awesome, that is so cool.
It's a $1 million rodeo.
So, and that's all kind of tied in with the Riding on Faith, but one date is the qualifying date. So that's by memory, so if I missed something big, please speak up. But
I don't think you've actually missed something big. I do know that Shannon Cone is coming back with his new sport that he's created, which is team bull riding, so to speak. And it was the initiation for the circuit last year. He's continuing the circuit this year, so he will be coming back. I believe it's in July.
It's July. It's,
The week before National Day of the Cowboy, isn't it?
yeah, it's actually the day after our qualifier. It's on the 17th of July.
So that could be a huge
It's ultimate
weekend
bull
for us.
riding.
So that's something that would be continuing to grow. And he's creating a new sport, trying to anyway. But nothing new and major. I mean, yes, Darcy. Sorry.
Thank you, Miss. I have two things. You forgot my birthday, so you need to put that down.
Are we advertising outside the county for that?
We should.
Okay.
I
I'll
mean,
make a note of that.
Margarita Day.
February 22nd is your birthday?
No, they need to change
Margarita Day,
Margarita.
National Margarita Day is February.
That's my sister's birthday.
Okay,
Okay.
so while you were talking, I looked up the law on, because it's kind of a thing, on hot tax revenues and how we can spend them, just to make sure. And if I may just, it's like 3 sentences. It says, under the tax code, every event, program, or facility funded with hotel occupancy tax revenues must be likely to do 2 things: directly promote tourism, directly promote the convention and hotel industry. Tourism, I'm not gonna define that, or direct promotion, y'all can read that yourself. The activity may result from hotel or convention guests that are already in town and choose to attend the hotel tax-funded facility or art or historical event, or it may result from individuals who come from another city or county to stay in the area lodging property, at least in part, to attend the hotel tax-funded event or facility. It doesn't say anything about more than 1 day, and I attended the Kiwanis thing, and if I didn't live 3 blocks from where it was at, I would have stayed in a place. Just saying.
So we've identified some folks to reach out to, though, at least.
Well, think about this, folks. We've got 33,000 in EDC promotional funds, and we've got 58,000 in city tax funds. So it's not like we're gonna be able to, I mean, there are no unreasonable requests in here at all until we get to the one that's 3 events combined in one, or how we're gonna figure that one out. But, if we fund all of these as requested for the council, we're looking at 47,720, and we currently have 58 in the bank. So, but of course, these are post-event, so there'll be more in the bank as we go along. But, so I don't know how y'all want to deal with that, but I think that we have these applications in front of us tonight. I think we need to discuss them and get on through them, because that is an action item on our agenda later. And I think, Tony, you left out 2 really big events that would qualify for both, and that are our 2 bike rallies, the one in the spring and the one in the fall.
Yes.
Huge increase in sales tax during that particular time, and
It's
also,
March and September, right?
March and October.
October.
And we support those.
yeah, it's first week of October and the last week of March.
October 1st through the 3rd this year.
Thunder's October.
Ruggles.
March.
Have they came to us for funds before?
No.
No.
The motorcycle rally? No,
I didn't think so. So what makes us think they're going to now?
because Bill asked me when I saw him at the opening ceremonies last year if his event would qualify.
Okay.
I said last year, it was this year. In March. Okay, we need to discuss the ones that are in front of us. As I said, it is a action item on our agenda.
We are still in workshop, though, so.
Ma'am?
I said we're still in workshop, right?
Yes.
So,
Who's
Do you-
after Cindy? Or were there any other questions about
the BBA,
Cowboys on Main?
Cowboys on Main, You done with Cowboys on Main? Okay, thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. Can I make one closing comment?
Ma'am?
Can I make one closing comment?
Sure.
I just want to just state, because I know we've had a lot of change in personnel, and so that the BBA is a nonprofit, and the BBA does take care of other events, and we have asked for no advertising funds this year. We're taking care of it ourselves. And so I want to throw that out, because in the past, everything we asked for advertising funds and for sponsorship. So right now, we've boiled it down to Cowboys on Main only. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Karen, you want to come on up here and we'll talk about riding on faith?
Keep it short.
Okay, there's an application to the EDC in the amount of
I didn't know because I'd never applied for none of this, so I just put a number there, to be honest. Sorry for the book.
Yes, Tony?
So I'd like to just point out the fact that this promotes who we are, who we say we are, at a youth level, at a young level, at a family level. The fact that they have summer rodeos, Friday nights all summer long. Karen coordinates that. The reason it's Friday, I had a long talk with her, the reason it is Friday is because there's other rodeos, like at Crider's that's nearby on Saturday and another one on Sunday.
Tejas and Bulverde.
And Bulverde. So she coordinates to make sure that she gets the optimal turnout on the rodeo circuit. And last year, that was all we had. I mean, really, with a lot of things shut down, Friday night rodeos were a big attendance, and I see that happening again just because people got used to it. And I think it's extremely important to promote who we are. And the promotion piece of it isn't always promotional advertising dollars. It's promoting who we are. And I think this does that in the best way. So that's my 2 cents.
Last year, if you looked at the budget, we were negative because that came out of our pocket because we didn't want to hit, that's a bad word. We didn't want to go to the people in Bandera a lot for sponsors, we talked about because of COVID. So Troy and I front-loaded and back-ended on our budget last year. So, but we did have, we had over 900 people at First Rodeo last year. And we averaged anywhere from 6+ each rodeo.
And you have local vendors in food. You have a local food vendor
I
out
have
there.
all of the vendors are local with exception to two, excuse me.
So that was another really great way for them to be outside and survive COVID last year.
And I'll say too, even with the pouring down rain that there was one evening, there was still over 600 people there. And we were standing out there with the Lions Club because we sponsored, and we were standing out there still enjoying it. Over 600 people were still out there enjoying it, and enjoyed being together and people being able to enjoy Bandera and what Bandera is. And it was fantastic. So, and there were people from everywhere out there.
I'm already vetting phone calls and emails from people coming from, I don't know how they're getting here because I don't know what from France. I've got people that are calling me from New York and all that area saying that, is there going to be a rodeo where we want to come? We're coming. Where do we stay? I have people asking me, and we really push our guest ranches and making your appointments like those bed Airbnbs. I give all that information out to them so they can make appointments to stay and just come in and stay. Because our guest ranches, they support us, so we support them.
I'm in full support of anything that involves families and youth especially. So I think it's a great event, and I think we need to have more things similar to that.
We try, and this is our 5th year, and this is the first time that I've ever really asked for any kind of advertising except for through there. But we do have, we do a lot of the kiddie, we are two of our mini bulls we have 2 different associations that last year I sent 15 kids to the finals that would have been in Vegas if Vegas hadn't been. They went to the junior NFR in Fort Worth last year. We get those kids. This week, I was running really late, trying to get here before 5. I've been vetting phone calls from people going, where do we stay? In contestants that are coming in all the way from, I got them on the other side of Fort Worth and Dallas this year that are calling me.
What percentage would you guesstimate is out of town as far as the actual participants?
Participants, 85%.
85, really?
We don't have We don't have a lot. I have 4 mini bull riders in Bandera. The rest of them are from, most of the people, my contestants are from out of Bandera County.
And I could,
Great advertising for us.
The
Yes,
other
ma'am.
thing too is I know that it always seems to come up. I know they have food vendors and stuff out there, but they're out there most of the day. So when they're done with the rodeo, they're looking for a place to eat and to come into town. So the rodeos tend to be the ones that are asking the restaurants to be late too. So they're wanting to come into town and boost the economy that way too, so.
I can tell you from a business perspective that every Friday night about 10:30, we'd get really busy. And,
Yeah,
So it's
kitchen-
on
and they would eat and, have adult beverages and have a really large time. So they are good for our city.
Yeah.
EDC members, they're requesting 10,000 from the EDC and 91 from the city. Any comments on that from the E EDC?
I would like
Yeah.
to support it in the sense that, I can remember very, very, many years ago when I lived in Northwest Houston. We had it on Cy-Fair rodeos, or, the Friday night's a big deal. It's all about families, and, it's before weekend, but it drags people into there. I mean, I was totally impressed with that, and I think the EDC should take a very hard look. It's my opinion.
It's a great family sport. I rodeo, believe it or not, this fat woman,
We
she.
don't have-
I mean, when you put a sign out and says rodeo tonight,
Even at Cy-Fair, yeah.
that's all you gotta do.
I'm sorry,
Thank you.
Karen, one more thing. How
Yes.
many total rodeos are there?
We have 10 this year.
10 this year, okay.
We always start the Friday after Memorial Weekend, and we go through the first Friday in August, and we stop then, if one, it's hot. And the livestock don't do well with the heat. And 2, the kids are going back to school. Football's starting back up, families are coming in less and
It's fine.
less after the first week of August. So we do it all the way through.
Okey dokey, so Jared,
What's the average attendance that you have at the rodeo and the average contestant entries?
Well, damn. Well, I'm gonna just use last year, because we averaged we ran out of armbands the first rodeo, and we just started sticking stamps, because due to COVID, we had to be very limited. We had over 900 there that I know of, because that's how many armbands I gave them. Our excuse me?
The first night.
The first night.
Nice.
Each rodeo, we averaged 600 people there.
I want to be clear on something.
Yes, ma'am.
On page 4 of your application for hot funding, you asked for advertising 4,500 and the expenses for sporting events, which is certainly allowable but for hot funds, 4,500, but you totaled it up to 9,100.
Oh,
Is
what
that
is
just
it?
a?
Is that
was
just
just
a
odd, but it was-
clerical
It was
error?
the error,
Okay.
Claire. Hey,
All
if the
right.
ones from today works, I was flying in here to get them to you. I was working on
All
those
right,
today.
well-
So it was a clear, and I'm an
We
accountant,
can live
ain't
with
that bad?
I just wanted to be clear.
Yeah, it is.
Anything more for Karen?
Thanks for all you're doing.
Thank you.
Trying.
And thanks for
Okay,
keeping
and we're really
local
excited
people.
about your future event, but I
All of
really,
my staff are local. Every one of my staff that works for us are all local people. Our contractors is one local contractor, but that's just,
Great.
there's not a lot
All right,
of-
Karen, thank you. We need to really get moving on
Thank
here.
you.
Thank you very much.
I want to go to Buckfest. Anybody here from the chamber?
Christine?
Me? Mayor? Me?
Suzanne?
Oh, there's somebody from the chamber. I found one.
Found her.
All right. Ms. Ma'am. So you're asking for 3620
Well, I think that's,
in hot funds.
yeah. I haven't looked at this, and it's the first time I've seen it.
Well, again, this is on a reimbursement basis. This has already happened, so if council decides to fund it, then we'll do the post-event report.
Yeah, I asked, brought it to, oh, it's right here. Your post-event report's in there. It's in the back. Okay, because I asked if they had done it, and they were working on it, so.
Well, folks, if y'all look on page 4, council, it's broken down. 2150 is for promotion of the arts and directly enhance tourism of the hotel convention industry, and that is to include a band and a photographer, and we have allowed that in the past. And item A is the actual promotion, the advertising, that's 1470 for a total of 3620. So, any questions? Clarification needed? They may very well be coming to EDC. Okay, last but not least, we have 11th Street Cowboy Bar. I don't know what to make of this, folks, because he asked for a total of 16,000, yet it wasn't broken down.
And there's no financial backup
Ma'am?
attached to his application.
It's not completed correctly, fully.
Yeah, there's nothing.
And he's for 3 different events in the same application. I don't know how you want to consider this, I don't know if you even want to, I don't know how to do it. Go, Jerry.
I think that we need the additional information and then we can discuss it. I think it's kind of a waste to spend any time on
I
it
agree
right
with
now.
you. Jared?
I know that that's a city application, but being as a workshop, I mean, right here, incentives, under any of these applications you look under, it says that applications must be filled in full and are considered on a first come, first served basis. And
Okay, so
my personal thoughts, if he wants to do 3 events on one application, he's being lazy.
Yeah.
Like I said, there's no financial
Well-
backup to any of these.
So I say kick it back until he comes back and do it the right way.
So, well, first of all, you were reading the EDC bylaws, and right, and you stated that this is a city application, and I understand too, the desire to have the 3 different events broken down. I don't know, what about what. I do know that nothing will be funded without the backup information as well, though. And however council decides to handle it, ask him to push it back or move on, that's fine.
Yeah, I think we should put this to the side. Yes, Tony?
So hot funds are reimbursed?
They're on a reimbursement basis, yes.
Okay. And so, because EDC's never done that, we don't do that. We give them promotional funding. so
You
that
do
they
it in
can
advance,
promote
yes.
it.
And that's so nice
So,
of you.
I just wanted to say that, just for clarification, because I didn't know about the hot funds. The other thing is that we've accepted other applications for multiple days,
Mhm.
even though these are 3 events. I mean, if he's promoting these 3 events year-round, then, I mean, we've accepted other multi-day things, and if he's promoting Bandera and everything going on 11th Street and the Mardi Gras Parade and all the things that he's in charge of, then I do agree with the financials. We need more specifics, especially if it's hot funds and reimbursing. But I don't know if I would really consider that a negative that he put them all on one.
Yeah, and also, he does promote not only his events, he promotes everything that's
Well,
going
he
on in
promotes the entire city.
town for that holiday or that season. And then all of his events benefit other businesses around,
If
not
you look
just
on
him.
page 4, the only category he's requesting funding in is the promotion of the arts. That would be to pay for music. No advertising, no anything else. So,
How do you promote arts without advertising?
hmm?
How do
The
you promote arts
He's
without
promoting his,
advertising?
but he's promoting his
He's paying
bands
for his bands with this
location.
money. It's what he did last year.
That is not promoting other locations of the weekend for other people. He's promoting for his
Yes,
bands in his
he-
location.
Every big weekend, he includes the parade, he includes the market days,
I know, but what she's saying is that that's promoting the arts, is promoting music, but he's only that, to me, that's his music.
Hang on a second. The way it was broken down last year, he asked for like 4,000 for the band and 6,000 for advertising and different, I don't know the exact numbers. But this year, and it was under B, the promotion of the arts for his bands specifically. And he's not asking anything for advertising, but promotion of the arts, and consulting Dan, he agreed that promoting of the arts would be to pay for band and entertainment for these events, so.
and
Yeah, I'd like to see the breakdown for each one too. I mean, this is just weak, and that's why I think that it's a waste of time to spend
Well,
much of any time on it right now.
That's the way I feel about it too. Just to give you a blanket.
I'd like to see us get that information, be more than happy to consider it, and, right now, again, I think it's a waste of our time.
Jared,
So I love his events, I love the amount of people they bring in, I think he does a really good job with that. But I'm a hard stickler for, if you don't fill out the application completely, it shouldn't even come before EDC in our case, or city council in your case, so that we're not sitting there discussing something that's not even complete and wind up in 3-hour-long meetings.
well, it's
My
not,
exact point,
Yeah.
it's not,
and I'd like to see us move
But
on
I,
right
yeah,
now.
I do too. I agree it's time to move on, but also this is on a reimbursement basis. So a lot of these applications are for events that are going to be happen. Now, let's get him to come back with all of his stuff.
I agree, and I think we should have them come back, and I know, Rebecca, you keep saying it's reimbursement, but if we're saying we're gonna lock $16,000 to that, then that's money that we're not
Right,
putting towards
that's not
something.
fluid.
So
Have an
that's-
invoice
Right.
for,
Exactly.
That's
for
the
the
issue that I
bands.
have,
Right.
so, anyway.
Yeah, anytime we say that, that, well, it's based on reimbursement, yeah, that's true, but it takes money away from someone else.
Potentially.
Anytime we do that,
Sure.
so
Well-
I think it's extremely important that we keep that in mind.
there's nothing to say we can't consider it later when you have a more complete application.
Absolutely.
Right.
The thing that concerns me about reimbursement for music is being in the business, you don't pay bands in checks, you pay them in cash. So I don't know how we're going to verify the expense. Jared?
but you can still get an invoice from the booking agents. And the contract from the booking agent on what you're
Contract
paying a
would be
band
great, yeah.
per night, so that you still have financials to show, even if you're paying in cash.
Very good.
Oh, yeah.
That's correct, there's always a contract. So it's really, really simple.
I'm sure they've shown
To
that as
document.
a business expense.
And the last application had all their financials,
All of them have all the requirements.
and they haven't started yet.
Okay then, in a case like that, we've considered all of these applications that are before us, talked about potential applications we could be looking at in the near future. From what I noted, Cowboys on Main has applied for $10,000 from EDC, Summer Rodeo Series, $10,000 from the EDC, and Jenna indicated that she would be approaching the EDC for funding for the Labor Day and Memorial Day events. So, without any further ado, do I have a motion to adjourn? Oh, it's not a separate thing. Okay then. End of that subject. I think we're done with the joint workshop. Anybody have anything more to say?
Anybody from the, I mean, it's kind of a public thing, right?
Sure.
I mean, it's a workshop for everybody, if anybody out there wants to add or say or have some questions.
Okay, thank you. Thank you guys so much. Y'all want to stay and hang around, you're welcome to, but we're going to move on with our city council stuff now. Okay, item 5 is the workshop, the council workshop. Item A, discussion of local amendments to the International Building Code. Terry, I believe you wanted to address the council. You had an idea how we could move this forward, if you want to come forward and talk to them.
Thank you.
That council packet with the agenda.
Hello.
For those of you who have not met our city administrator, this is Terry Bird, our city administrator. Okay,
Mayor,
Mayor,
time out.
Time
Por
out.
favor.
we do not have the
Council packets.
council packet with an agenda or anything. We might, but none of us do.
Jill,
We're not really sure what you're reading off of at the moment.
Coming to a theater near you.
maybe they didn't think you were staying, I don't know.
I'm thinking about it.
No.
I've got it pulled up
I've
on
got
my email.
Sorry.
As y'all know, we've been discussing adopting a newer international building code and international residential code for many years. I think with the developments that we've got coming now and the master plan that's coming along, I think it's a good time for us to actually get down serious to brass tacks and make a decision. And Terry, you've been looking at this at great length. Do you want to share what your opinion with council?
Yes, ma'am. I did some research on the codes and actually met with Councilmember Gibson. And I explained to her what I had found. And that was the possibility of checking with the attorney in amending one section of the code that would give us some flexibility to address the future code issues that may come across to us. There was I think Simple City and the attorney had some discussions with the mayor and Mayor Pro Tem last Friday. And I think there were some urgings, they need to adopt the code and then make amendments later. And so.
No. Flip that. Make the amendments and then adopt the code has been the recommendation consistently.
Okay.
Sorry.
I knew that's been the ongoing, but I thought there was some also, it was just adopted and we'll address it later.
Who said that? I'm not sure where you're getting that at
Well,
all.
okay.
Sorry, I'll
That
stop.
was proposed at one point. Not advised, but proposed.
Not by who T-Bird just identified, so I don't want information out there.
Well, I'll retract that and restate that the possibility of amending the code with this one section may give us the flexibility to make changes as we see fit going forward. And then in addition, we had some discussions in regards to how do we make sure that we can address issues before construction begins on remodeling or a new building. And we could do that by having a planned review meeting with the potential person that wants to pull the permit. And we look at the plans and we let them know exactly what our standards are. Look at they know what the codes are, and then we review it, and then the input would allow us to decide if any amendments need to be made to accept it. It would go to the Board of Appeals, and that was the section I was looking at.
Mhm, right.
The Board of Appeals is the council in the building code and the rest of the codes. And so by looking at it before before they start, we have a chance to look at it. They have a chance to make appeal, to make adjustments, amendments to the code at that time.
What do you think about that, Jimmy? Have you talked to the contractors? Are we having any difficulty with our codes and amendments that need to be made? And have you seen the suggestion?
I was just barely shown that this afternoon before the meeting, so I don't want to speak on that because I don't really know, but I did take Jerry's advice from the last meeting when we left off about getting with the professionals, and so I picked 4 that came to my mind in the 4 respective fields, and either I sat down with them for lunch or I had a face-to-face or telephone conversation with them, and if you'd like for me to go over what those meetings were about real quick, I can sum it up real fast and not take up too much of your time, but it'll kind of sum up what I've been trying to bring forward. I met with Greg Winters, who's an electrician, and his name comes up most of the time also when you talk about doing electrical work, and he was concerned about, the only thing that when asked about amendments, he was speaking about a certain type of wire that he had to use when he did a certain type of construction. I'm not going to get into the details because a lot of it's not English, even when I try to listen to him, but basically the code's so outdated that he thought he had to use a certain type of material, and he didn't have to, and that's because we're still in the 1999 electrical code, and that information is not available to him, so there was confusion there. And so he was all for bumping up to the 2015, and he didn't offer anything past that. Everybody I talked to, I gave them a good amount of time to go over the 2015 building code so they can actually, and don't give me an answer tomorrow, think about it, get with me next week, that type of deal. And so he didn't have any recommendations for amendments. He's all for jumping to the 2015 code. Most of y'all are probably familiar with Jason Lopez when it comes to plumbing, and 9 times out of 10, when you mention plumbing, that's the name that you get. And Jason even conferred with a guy that he considers an expert in the industry, and besides a few definitions in the 2015, he said there was nothing in there. And he thinks that if you move up, and I'm reading off what because I quoted him, and he said adopting the 2015 code will ensure proper construction and fairness, you know, because some people are using it, some people aren't, you know, and that brings me to the HVAC guy that I spoke to, and it was Phil Acton. He works for, or owns Bandera. And Phil Acton was of the same mindset. He didn't have any recommendations. He used to be on the city council. He says that he recommends jumping up to the 2015, and his example that he gave me is that there's people out there still using outdated ductboard for their work, and he's using the updated stuff, and so he's getting underbid by these people that are going off of this code when he's using the stuff you should be using right now. And so he's losing some business in Bandera off of that. For my general contractor, I spoke with Steve Jareski, who told me himself he's got 15 houses going up right now. And he was real cut and dry with me when I talked to him about it. He offered no amendment recommendations. He said people need to build things right, and he was all for it. So I met with 4 people that in my mind I see with making permits that are the ones that are coming across my desk the most, and none of them had any recommendations for an amendment. So that's where I'm at also, because I'm going to go off what my professionals are telling me.
Thank you, Jimmy. Tony?
It sounds like, when I'm listening to you talk, it sounds like new construction is kind of what all they're talking about. But in my mind, that I 100% agree, new construction should be to the latest and greatest code. I think what I have heard over the years in Bandera is everybody is worried, and I will say that a lot of our people that own our buildings in downtown, they're not keeping them up. And they're not doing the maintenance on them, and they're not doing the remodels that they need to. And some of the buzz, whether it's accurate or not, is because they're in fear of being in the city and not being able, and having to come up to a certain standard where it would cost them an extreme amount of money to do that, and it wouldn't be really real cohesive to the building because it was built in whatever.
Right.
So the remodel part, so was there any discussion versus?
No,
Maybe with
and the main deal about that is how long are they going to just let it go?
Exactly.
You know, and how long before it becomes a danger? And, you know, I understand the fear of, hey, if we adopt a new existing building code, that I'm going to walk around, you know, just going business to business, pointing stuff out, and it's not the case. It's going to be a case-by-case basis. If I get called over there, or you want to do something, and we go inspect and look, and I say, hey, well, now that we're dealing with this, let's address this. You know, it's not going to be just, here's a list of stuff you have to fix, here's a list of stuff you have to fix. And, but we can't just because it's an old building, we can keep the exterior old, but we've got to update eventually, or it's going to become a hazard.
I agree.
Yeah.
And so to that, I would say that if we were to do the 2015 per contractor consensus, then have in there and like the Board of Adjustments, like subjected like Terry, because if you get to a point where a logical person says this building cannot handle that, or, you know, and contractors involved and inspectors, Bureau Veritas, and they're saying that this is a little extreme for this building to ask for that, then they have
Right.
that recourse to say we want it safe and sound and built effectively, but the recourse is that we're dealing with an old building and come up with a logical and practical way to solve it.
Right, and I'm all about compromise when it comes to that, because a lot of people can't afford to maybe to do certain things, and there's certain things that you guys as a board can say, okay, well, we're not gonna skip out on the fire safety, but, you know, maybe you don't have as many urinals as you're supposed to or something. You know, there's ways to compromise to help people out, but that's what I've been trying to get. That's what I've been trying to suggest from the get-go, is if we just adopt this, and then when we come up with something that we need to address, they're so far and in between that we can address them and get them taken care of, because we've had the 2003 since 2014, and hadn't had to do it.
So just to finish this out, my fear by going down that route is that elected officials do not, if they're making the final call on something
We
like
don't
that,
have the knowledge.
then they don't have the knowledge, skills, and experience. So I would hope that we would put something in place of what it was required, that the solution being proposed is from the contractor, the owner of the building, and Bureau Veritas agrees with it, and that it come to the board with actual facts and presentation from that aspect. Because what I see is what's happened in the past, where favoritism happens and you lose the precedence and you lose the authenticity and the integrity of what we're trying to do here. So that's my summary.
I want to respond to her, Carrie, and then I'll let you have the floor. I was really disappointed in the Board of Appeals when the variance was granted to the old Longhorn not to put in a fire suppression system. Although the state had signed off and BV said, well, if you can get the state to sign off, we were extra wide doors, no firewalls, anything else, and no sprinkler system. And I think those are things we cannot set a precedent by doing that in the public building. So we need to, as you say, we need to have really a group of the professionals, the contractor, BV, whoever, to sit down together to come up with a solution, not in a,
It saddens me that you use that as an example, because that is not by any means an example that should be used on how something should be built in this town. So, and it shouldn't be just, anyway, so that's all I'm gonna say about that.
I'd like to, before we just sign off on something that's so broad, I'd like to see at least some of the differences between the 99 and the 2015 building codes, just to see how it may affect our current buildings. And I'm all for safety.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we've got to use good judgment here and not end up causing one of our buildings to be shut down, which we can't say that wouldn't happen, right? Until we at least know what this entails. And I know that's probably opening up a can of worms, but I think it's necessary for us to know what we're getting into, not just assume it's all gonna be okay.
Jared?
Okay. I want to preface this with, I've got a lot of experience with IBC. I dealt with this as a secondary MOS in the Marine Corps for 12 of my 16 years, going and inspecting government buildings for all this stuff. IBC states that anyone doing contracting work, things like that, must either use the most up-to-date IBC or the local ordinance, whichever one is more stringent. By you guys having this on the books of adopting an IBC causes confusion. So if you just get rid of this on your books, as a default, you never have to revisit it. Contractors are required to go by the latest IBC standards. Now, when it comes to fire sprinklers in a building, if you look at IBC codes having to do with fire suppression, fire safety, max occupancy, it'll state you have to have this unless you meet these conditions. So putting in extra wide doors, having 33% more egress routes out of a building, things like that, then you can, I think for downtown area, most of the building owners that have concerns has to do with ADA compliance. If it's not brand new construction and you're doing a remodel or a repair, that stuff you don't have to worry about. So again, by having this ordinance on your books of the city of Bandera looks at the 2003 IBC, you're just causing confusion for contractors or anybody that's looking to pull a permit. If you just say the most current IBC standards is what applies, there's no question about it.
Thank you. Will?
I'm not sure that I can allay, for example, Councilman Russ's fears about it, because I haven't looked at the 15. I know it's huge and it is confusing. but when Jimmy and I initially discussed this after the last council meeting, when this was brought up, I made sure to tell him, hey, don't go talk to the friendliest, easiest to get along with contractors. Go see Jason Lopez. Tony, if you remember, to a previous code enforcement building official, Jason was the one that was the most vocal about the whole process. And Philip Acton is the same way. I can't speak to the other two because I've only spoken to them in passing. But those two are very vocal about when there's a problem. And that's why I said make sure and visit with Jason and make sure and visit with Phil, because they're going to tell you if there's a problem, if there's something they don't like. They're going to be the ones that aren't ashamed or afraid to speak up on it. So that is my 2 cents on it.
Darcy?
Jimmy, is what Jared said, is that accurate for the city?
I mean, I haven't looked into that. It could be. I don't want to speak on it because it's nothing that I've read before, but like I said, that book is 680 pages now, and the new one's just 700 pages, so there's only 20 more pages to it. And to answer your question a while ago, the main change I was told by BV, who's using the 2015, is environmental stuff.
Is the what?
In the environmental section, that's the majority of the change of it. It makes sense what he's saying, and I mean, it would cause a lot less heartache for people having to have these meetings if there was something blanketed there that said, and that's what I thought we had before when it said that no need to amend whenever a new one comes out, but Dan kind of sunk that. But I'm all for that. My only problem with that is a lot of people don't like to be on the very first one that came out, like the 2021 code, because maybe there's some kinks in it or some stuff in it. All the professional people I talk to that do what I do usually stay one version back, which would be, I guess the 18 right now is a version, is what's on there. They're fixing to jump to the 21. So that's why I recommended the 15, because it keeps us far enough from, so we can watch what goes on with that new one in case there's a whole bunch of changes and we don't have to go through there and do a lot of stuff. But to answer your question, it makes a lot of sense, and it would be a lot easier.
I mean, if we're gonna have the BOA meeting on, doing the variances on stuff anyways, I think it makes sense.
But those wouldn't be variances. If we adopted the codes, they wouldn't be variances at that point. They'd be required, right?
Well, unless they apply for a variance.
Yeah, but that's where I don't think we can come
Is
into
it
play,
adjustment?
because we don't have the knowledge for that.
Appeals.
Well, that's where we take the advice of the
should have a committee,
professionals.
a group of Jimmy, a couple of contractors, a couple of good contractors that might be willing to volunteer their time, that gives us their input on this stuff, instead of us just assuming we know what we're talking about or doing, and we either deny or approve an adjustment. So that's what I recommend, is we form a committee. And I would think that we have enough professionals here in this area that we could get some to participate in that.
Rebecca?
Okay, a couple of things, and one is I would love if the Board of Appeals, it is Board of Appeals, right? Were a committee of professionals with direct knowledge to the subject matter. That would be excellent. So in the event that we have some folks that want to step up to fill those roles, and how often does it happen, right? We might be able to pull that together. What I don't want to see happen is when one of our property owners is doing a project, and maybe they're working on a historic building, and maybe they're putting a lot into a beautiful remodel on a building that needs so much work and has been neglected for so many years, and then to hit a wall with the city. And this is what this is the bad experience that people have, and this is before you. I'm not talking about like your role with it at all, Jimmy. Don't think that. But that there has just, they've hit a wall and been halted, and then maybe they come for a variance through the Board of Appeals, or maybe they don't. Maybe they just have to shut down because they've gotten no leeway whatsoever. I don't want people who are trying to invest into this community to make it better to get held up because they're having to halt their construction. Who knows what kinds of headaches and expenses they're gonna have to go through for that. And then they're gonna have to come and pay for a variance, and then they're gonna have to come and sit in front of what has been traditionally a board of council members, and somebody might not like that guy, so they don't wanna grant him a variance, or it's competing with her business, so she doesn't wanna grant him a variance, and there's just too much subjectivity going on. So that's part of it. I would love to come back to this idea of a review committee where folks are, what you said earlier, T-Bird, about the plan review committee, which I know Bureau Veritas is doing some of that for us already, but how do we make sure that every permit application that, you've got the knowledge of the properties in the city, and if it's an old building, and you can review something and maybe recognize this could have some potential problems. Let's get in front of this for this person and identify what those could be and work with them to avoid that kind of stoppage on their project. And that maybe for this type of variance that there weren't a fee for that person. Because if it is something that could potentially involve a code amendment, I don't want to put that bill on the citizen. I think that's that.
Jared?
To address Congressman Roos and Congresswoman Councilman.
I was like, whoa, did I get promoted?
Sorry, I'm
Or was
thinking
he-
national level already.
Thanks.
So as far as the a committee, that sounds like something perfect for your planning and zoning commission.
No, not if it's not a
It's
bill.
planning.
Sorry. I'll be
That would
quiet.
fall under the planning, it would be what I see. And you've already got people there that are completely underutilized to be able to research, and there's a lot of knowledge on that committee when it comes to construction and codes and things like that. The second one, when you're looking at IBC, if the city itself just adopts and says blanket, our standards or whatever the latest IBC standards are, you're not looking at getting a whole lot of variances. If you sit down and read through IBC, like I said, when it goes over fire suppression systems, says this is required if these conditions are met, but you may not need this if you meet all these other conditions. And then there's special, already built in, there's special considerances for historical buildings, fall under different purviews, things like that. So historical buildings that you want to rebuild under those standards aren't going to fall under the same ADA type of compliance laws. But when it comes to actual building code, like saying this is the type of electrical conduit you've got to use, this is the type of water transport system you've got to use. You don't use PEX on a hot water heater blow-off valve because you turn it into a time bomb.
Sorry.
You don't do all these other things. Those aren't something that a builder or an owner is going to come to the city asking for a variance on. If somebody came to the city asking for a variance on using PEX on a hot water heater blow-off valve instead of copper, because they say it costs too much and it would not be cost effective for them for that building, I would make the recommendation that, then stop it right there, because you got a time bomb sitting in the middle of the city.
That's one thing that we need to consider in variances, and we're kind of getting away from
I
the
just don't
subject
feel
here.
like that's what I'm
But
referring to.
financial hardship is not a reason to grant a variance, and yet councils in the past have kind of taken that into consideration. Well, I already bought the sign, so, something we need to consider. Jimmy?
I just want to say one final thing. This, Ms. Coons and Jared both mentioned about having to stop work or worried about, I can't do this because, my building. There's been numerous times when a contractor's plans were halted in the initial phase, and BV plan reviewers are real good about getting with the contractor And personally, not through me and missing all these steps and getting a bunch of confusion, they'll email them directly and they work with each other until they get a final deal that they've compromised with, they've worked with each other on it, and then they send me and said, hey, well, they've made the changes, this is gonna work. Not once since I've been doing this, except for the Ohio place, which was a totally different circumstance, has anything been halted because there's been some sort of regulation that's kept them from finishing a job. They've always been able to come to terms with each other before it even gets off the ground.
Good.
And then that way there's no confusion throughout the project.
Thank you. There's not an action item on the agenda about this tonight, so is there anything new that council wants to bring out that we haven't brought up tonight? We can always communicate through the office and get our ideas out there, and you're more than welcome to read 2,000 pages anytime you want to, side by side.
Oh, I have one other
That's what
question.
I'm looking for,
Yes, ma'am.
what the expert's doing.
As far as updating to 2015, since we're taking this massive jump right now, why not just go to 2018? Because this year a new one came out, and if we want to stay just 2 editions behind for what is it? ISO, then why not just go to 2018?
I mean, if you want my honest opinion, it's been really hard to get it to go to 2015.
Well, I know.
2018.
I'm just thinking though,
But
while
I
we're
mean,
at
that
it.
makes- That makes sense to me too. If that's something that y'all want to do, I'm not gonna say no.
Because we're gonna be in the same boat, whether we go with 2015 or 2018, from what I'm understanding.
I guarantee you the
And
differences is-
that will get us 6 years down the road as opposed to 3 years down the road in terms of being 2 editions back for ISO.
Tony had her hand
Without
up first. Tony
opening
had her
this,
hand
oh,
up
I'm
first.
sorry.
So,
Sorry, I thought you were-
I had kind of that thought already. When we go to make this decision, I would like to see that we do something a little more visionary, and that if we accept 2015 or 18, we determine at what point, how many editions are we behind? So every time there's a new release, we
3
automatically
years.
go up to the next one. And so so each council doesn't have to keep revisiting this every time. And really look at it holistically with the amendment process, and I don't see any reason why we can't move forward with that. But
Yes, sir.
I'm with him that we probably should adopt the, just as current, because what are we missing there?
Yeah, why do
Between
we
15 and 18, or 15 and 21,
yeah.
you know?
A lot
But at
less
the same
than
time, we wanna-
2003 to 15.
If we're gonna upgrade, I would say we go with the latest, greatest upgrade.
Well, let's consider
so
that
to
when we
speak.
get there.
Makes it
So-
easier.
Thought and research to
Yeah, that's why I'd like to see at least some examples. For example, here's some differences between 99 and 15, or 99, especially between 99 and 21, or whatever the latest version is. But yeah, that's pretty much opening up a can of worms, because there are so many pages of that stuff. But at least to pick out some significant ones that we may want to really consider, that would give us an idea of what we're getting into.
Rebecca?
I think that a helpful addition to your comparison, for me, would be to see another city and the types of amendments, a similar size city, and what amendments have they made, and like what the relevance is. Because
We've been talking about that for weeks though, Rebecca, and
I know-
there's no
no,
other-
we've been talking about it for years, Suzanne. So it's
but
not just
Lakey doesn't
these
have any
weeks.
amendments, and that's the only city our size anywhere around here, so, you know.
Lakey?
Uh-huh.
I'm sorry. Okay. Okay. I don't know how accurate that is, but okay.
Okay, done.
So where are we at?
I'd like to close out just by saying we left with a course of action last time. Where are we at this time, so we can keep this thing rolling and it doesn't just disappear? Where would you guys like to see this? What's the next step from here so we can keep pushing forward?
One of us can request to put it on the next agenda, which I plan on doing.
Yeah. we just don't have an action item here. Yeah, that would be what I would say. No action on your part except answering our phone calls when we call you.
It rings loudly.
Well, I would like to see a few examples. I mean, if you can do that easy enough without
Sure, that's not a problem.
really just a handful of examples, maybe the most significant.
Right.
And we know that there'd be other ones along with that, but just a feel of what we're getting into.
Is he on Zoom? Kurt? Okay. All right, folks, if we're ready to move on, did you have anything else you wanted to say, Terry?
No, ma'am, good discussion.
All righty. Our presenter, Kirk Franklin, is on Zoom, so I'd like to skip down to number 7. Item B, discussion and possible action on the following items. Presentation from Kirk Franklin about recodification of the ordinances.
Hang on one second.
Suzanne.
Yes, Tony.
While she's doing that, I'd like to, if we could do D after this, because that's, I know it's on that.
Okay. Can we skip back up to the consent agenda real quick and then come back down to it?
That's fine, yeah. She said it's okay.
I'm just telling him to turn his camera on.
Hello?
Hi,
Hey, hello, how are y'all?
doing good. Are you gonna turn your camera on, or are you just gonna speak?
Yes, ma'am, hold on
Okay.
just a second here. There we
There
go.
he is. Okay.
Am I on?
You are, okay.
Good, good.
Everybody good?
How's
Yeah.
everybody?
Good, how are you?
He's over here.
Well, no, but the camera, the camera's over there.
Okay, go ahead, Kurt.
Okay, I assume that y'all have talked about this before a little bit in meetings. I'm not sure how much you're aware of what all we've talked about, but Jill and Keely and I have been visiting about this a little bit. We've been your codifier for many years now, since I believe 2006, 2007, and that was when we first codified the code that you have now. Before that, it was done by an out-of-state firm, and the reason that we recodified it at that time was because there were quite a few supplements that had been done to it. There were some errors and some things that needed to be cleaned up in it, and so we went through it at that time and prepared that new code. That's been some time ago, obviously, since 2007, I believe, when it was adopted. We've done 9 supplements to it since then. And most of our clients, we work with, around 350 cities in Texas. Most of our clients, after they've had a code for anywhere from 8 to 10 years or more, they'll recodify. And the reason that you would recodify is just state law has changed. You may have some things stuck in your code from, it was correct when you adopted it, but state law has now changed. And so it's a good idea to go through and take a fresh look and bring everything up to speed on that. Also, just on the supplements themselves, when you have a number of supplements in your book, then you end up with some blank pages and some partial pages, and so your book is just a little bit, hard to handle. It's not as clean looking as it was. And there can also be some inconsistency just in the style and the formatting over time. So again, it's just a way to clean those things up. And there may be some things that the city is doing now that just aren't reflected in the ordinances. Maybe you've got local practices that are in conflict with something in the code. Just things like that it's good to take a good fresh look at it. Like I said, about every 8 to 10 years is when most cities do that. So what we were talking about doing was recodifying. starting over with your code. And by starting over, we're not throwing it out and just completely starting over. We're using it as the base material, but we'll also be updating it to bring in all your new ordinances that we haven't codified yet. We'll also be doing a legal review on it, editorial review, where we'll be going through and just picking it apart, trying to find anything that we think the city might want to look at updating as part of this project. And as part of this project, when I say the city updates, we can actually do that for you. So that we prepare a draft, we can make all these changes and make the revisions and draft everything for you so that when you adopt the code, it will adopt all these changes. So you don't have to go back piece by piece and fix these things yourself. Let me just see, I had made myself a few notes here, and I think I sent these to Keely as well. We'll of course still, once the code is adopted, we'll still provide the same supplementation services to you. We can update it on whatever basis you want, however frequently you'd like to have it updated. We have some cities that do once a month, we have some cities that do once a year. It's really just up to you. We'll still have the code online. We've updated our website a little bit, as you may have noticed, and we're constantly trying to bring in new features on that to make it a little more user-friendly and have a few more features. And we can talk about that if y'all are interested down the road when we get your new code in place. So I put together a proposal for you. Do you all have any questions for me before I go into any detail on that?
Kirk, I do. I'm Suzanne, I'm the mayor. I want to introduce the council around. We've got Tony Kuntz. Yeah, way over there. Jerry Russ, Mayor Pro Tem Rebecca Gibson, Christine Morse, and Darcy Hasty. My question is this. Well, it's two questions. We're in the process of creating a new master plan right now. So it would be more like toward the end of this process, should council agree to go that way, that we would even attack Chapter 3 and Chapter 14. Chapter 3 is building regulations, and Chapter 14 is our zoning codes. And so, do you start at the beginning and go to the end, or how do you figure this out?
May I interject just something, just maybe for further explanation? Sorry, what's your name again? Kirk Franklin. With our new master plan, the company who's helping us through that process is actually coding the master plan. So they're proposing revision of our entire Chapter 14 development code.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think if I'm understanding the mayor, we don't want to spend resources on a chapter in the ordinances that's likely or possibly to be revised.
Right.
Yeah.
And we did talk about that, especially on the building codes. I know that's something that you're looking at completely redoing. And that's part of the reason that we first started talking about this project, is because when you're doing a major update to your existing code, the cost for that service is per page based. So if you're going to be, amending so many pages of your code at one time, it really makes more sense to just start fresh, and then we can work it in there as we do that, and then you're not paying that per page cost for that. Now, on the master plan, like on a zoning ordinance, it's our policy not to really ever change anything in the zoning ordinance. In fact, most cities like to have them done as exhibits. We'll include them in your code. They'll be there, they'll be searchable online and everything, but we don't do anything other than just put it in as an exhibit, just because that way a couple of reasons. One, because there's some procedural restrictions on amending or changing a zoning ordinance, so it's not really something that we can do as part of codification. But it's also good, I think, to be able to have a standalone copy of those ordinances, your zoning ordinance in particular, so that if someone comes in and says, I need a copy of your zoning ordinance, you're going to give them an actual updated copy of that ordinance, not just a chapter out of your code. So I understand what you're saying. Yeah, we wouldn't be spending it. In fact, if you're drafting an all new one, then we would completely just hold off on, if we had to even just reserve that chapter until it's completed. We'll work with you on that to make sure that we don't do any duplicate effort or any confusion on that.
Thank you. Okay, another question that I have is, depending on whether council agrees and what of these options we're talking about, you're saying a 4 to 6 month timeline. That's going to be at the beginning of our next budget. So are we going to need to budget it this year and make an amendment and then budget it next year as well? Is this going to cross over?
I can be very flexible with you on this. In fact, if you wanted to get started on it now and not build anything until October, we can do it that. When I say 4 to 6 months, that's a very flexible timeline, just because a lot of that is dependent on how soon we can get materials from the city and how much time you want to take to, review things and how long it takes for us to get together. If everything just goes like clockwork, it's 4 to 6 months. It may be a little more than that, but on the billing itself, I'm willing to do whatever. If you need me to move it all until October, we can do that. Or if you had some money you wanted to put towards it this year and then delay the rest till October. I have a payment schedule in the proposal that I sent you, but that's just kind of a tentative one. It's whatever works for you.
Well, it's good to know we have that option, because as I said, we are just now beginning the budget process, and I think Jill has a question or comment.
I was just gonna say, I did put in my budget money for codification that I have not used yet this year.
For this
And I
year?
had almost enough for that first payment that's in the schedule that I haven't used, because we were holding off on codifying until we got some.
How much do you have in your budget this year?
I think I have 1,800 or 2,000, something like that. I'm not sure what's left. I've
It'd be a
used some of
start
it,
though,
But it
right?
was almost the first payment that's in your schedule. I don't have it.
I'm looking for the schedule.
Okay,
I'm not
thank you.
seeing it.
Just save it.
Questions from council?
Just
Tony.
a statement, I agree this definitely needs to be done. I mean, it hasn't been done in a while, overhaul kind of deal. I would like to, hold off on any decisions until we get maybe a timeline from Central City to see when we can kind of coordinate this. And I love the flexibility that Kirk's offering us as far as payment, the fact that we do have some for the first payment. But I'd like to have a better idea of how these two are going to kind of coincide with each other. So.
Darcy?
I don't necessarily agree that it needs to be done by a company. But I do agree that if we, as a council, think that it has to be done, that it needs to wait until after we figure things out with Simple City and that stuff's been done. To me, this is extremely expensive. I mean, when I'm looking at he's talking about per page, and we're looking at the cost per page for things too. That's insane to me. I don't think we have to have a company to do this, especially when Simple City's going to be doing big chunks of it for us as part of a cost that we're already doing, that we're already going to be paying for. And then we already have big things, big expenses coming up. So I think this is something, as far as my opinion goes, that we don't need to be doing right now. And then also, he said that they codified our code before the last time, and I'm not really happy how it is right now. So I think if we want to do this, we should probably look at some other companies as well. And again, I just want to say I think it's very expensive. So that's where I'm at.
Rebecca?
I am looking for the payment schedule, and I have the proposal here in front of me. Does anybody know what page it's on?
It's on the second.
The second page.
It's on page 2.
Okay, sorry. And then I would just add that Simple City, to my understanding, is pretty much exclusively looking at Chapter 14, not all of our codes and ordinances. And when you mentioned not having a company do it, I just don't understand that, because some of what was initially stated is that many of the ordinances that are in our books now, while you said you originally codified it back in 2007 as a whole ordinance, since then pieces have been added, since then pieces have been taken away, and since then state law has changed, and our staff aren't attorneys to know what those things are and what needs to be addressed by council. I don't know. I just think it's no offense to our staff, like there's just a level of expertise that's involved in this kind of a larger process, I think.
Well, and if I could,
Please.
Some of the things that I hear in working with cities is they'll say, well, we're lacking in this area and it's not in our code. We only codify what is adopted and sent to us. But if you are lacking things, like I said, we work with so many cities. We have a library. We can provide you with just about anything in the world on ordinances. If you need samples, when we get to that point where we're making revisions and doing our review portion, we're gonna depend on input from the city, like what is it that you're missing, or what are you lacking here? Or how is this inconsistent with what your actual practices are? We're gonna look to you for some input on that too, so that as we do our revisions, we can bring it all up to speed so that it will be correct and current.
Jill had her hand up.
I was just gonna say, Rebecca, you were in the meeting last week with Simple City, and I gave a copy of this presentation to Matt, and he said it was not going to affect what they were doing.
Right.
Tony?
I would just like to say that it's kind of a consulting contractor, services that we're asking Franklin to do. And it's important to, like all consulting services, any contract that you do, you get out of it what you put into it. And so just like when we were hesitant to hire Simple City to do this, and we were hesitant to do stewardship strategies to do what they did for us, we as a whole will be a part of this, but we are hiring the professionalism to review it, to make sure that we're not contradicting ourselves, which is where we are in many places in our code. We're looking for things, how many times have we come up where we have to default to the state because it's a gap in our code? These are situations that we need to make sure that we're documenting and handing it over to Franklin so that they can give us a recommendation on how to fill those gaps, how to remove those contradictions, and simplify our code. I mean, it's like, it just seems so convoluted, and we're not that big, and I think we've coded ourselves into a corner. So having some sort of standardization and taking some of that out, streamlining it, I guess would be a better word. I think we would all benefit from the professionalism and fresh eyes looking at it, which I admit none of us have. I mean, so.
Thank you, Tony. Darcy?
While I agree that we do need to definitely look at it, I'm the first one to say, I want to look at every single one of our ordinances and go over it. But I do want to say, the biggest difference that I see between Franklin and Simple City is when I looked at Simple City stuff and I was sitting out in the audience as opposed to sitting up here, is every step, every single page of Simple City stuff, every time they spoke to council and to the public, it was all about, what does council say, what does the public want? I don't see that
It's
here.
a totally different, that's apples and oranges.
I don't think so. I get that
This
it's
is-
different, but it's not apples and oranges when it comes to ordinances. That's rules and local laws that we all live under. And that's extremely important because you're talking about what I can have in my property, what I can have in my yard, where I can park. That's all very important stuff. And I don't necessarily want a company that doesn't know us looking at that and making those decisions without necessarily taking everything we have to say. I'd rather us look at it piece by piece
Absolutely
and make those
not.
decisions.
And that's what we do. We prepare a preliminary draft for you that will outline everything that you have in effect at this time. It's a draft that we've made no changes to at all. It's what you have adopted. It's what the city has in place. And based on that preliminary draft, then we do our review, looking at it kind of from an outsider's point of view, saying, okay, we know that your neighboring cities are doing this and they're doing it differently than what you have here. Or we know that you've got a gap here, you're missing this. Or you've got this ordinance that was adopted in 1984 and this ordinance that was adopted in 2005, and the two just don't quite make sense together. How can we meld these together and work this together? We don't make any changes to this without the approval of the city. We work closely with the city, and we send you proposed changes to be made to the code and sit down with you and go through those things. If you agree with them, then we work them in and we codify them. If you don't, if you have other input, then we make those changes. But it's completely city-driven, basically. We're just making recommendations based on things that we see from our years of doing legal reviews and editorial reviews on these codes, from working with cities all over the state, and then we just make our recommendations, like I said.
This is something that councils have been talking about again for years, and I just don't see the sense in us, a bunch of lay people, sitting down and reading chapter by chapter code by code. I think, my opinion, we ought to go for this base cost and think about what else we want them to do. I don't know about the attorney's fees, but, we really need to get the professionals in here to do this. It would be like having me go lay bricks someplace. I don't know what I'm talking about, so, Tony? Okay, Jerry.
You were doing like that and coming back down, I didn't know, go ahead.
I don't know if he's up or
Go ahead.
down.
Okay, it's more of a statement. I think it's something that's extremely important that needs to be done. The cost doesn't seem initially outrageous. I think looks reasonable. And Kurt, could you explain to me a little bit about the $20 per page?
Yes, that is for your future update costs. That's down the road once we get things adopted and in place. So let's say you have your code adopted, it's all fresh and new, and in the next few months you're adopting ordinances. You're going to want to keep that code current. So we're going to do supplements to the code. So that's what the $20 per page is. Now, the $20 per page is not per page of the ordinance itself. It's per page changed in the code. So, if you had say you had a 3-page ordinance, it may only actually affect 1 page of your code, because what we do is we take that code and we pull the preamble and the numbering, the signatures, all that out. We're just going for the text of the code of that ordinance that changes part of the code, and then we work that into your code. We codify it, we make the style consistent with the rest of the code, we update your website to reflect that part of the code, and then we print out the printed pages for insertion in your books. So the $20 per page, it's that process that you're paying for, basically, of codifying those ordinances.
And that is the current rate we're paying at this time, I believe.
Yes.
So we're already paying that.
That's,
Everybody.
So that's a wash.
well, may I, that's
that
just
correct?
what I was gonna say, is that is already what we pay if we adopt a new ordinance, we're gonna pay $20 a page to codify it. So that's existing. That's not a rate for, I don't know if you heard what he was saying, but then,
It's a maintenance.
yeah,
Right.
it's for anything.
Yeah, like I said, that's just down the road. That's not part of the initial codification project. We don't have any limitation on pages or anything like that.
Tony?
So if we move forward with this, we already have some areas that have been sitting out there for at least 3 years that we've identified that are conflicts. So I mean, whoever we get to do this, or, we've been talking about this forever. We've been talking about city council sitting down and going code by code and identifying things that don't work with our city, which doesn't mean we can't already do that.
Still.
But we can give input to the consultant to make a better product and make better use of our money, and we've already identified some to start with. And so I think it's definitely a process for professionals, and I think we've all proven that we've got a lot on our plate, and it's been talked about and tossed around for, I've been involved since 2014, and I'm pretty sure I heard conversations when I was 12. So, it's like, it's the same thing over and over again. We don't have the time, so.
Well, and things like that, things that you are aware of already, I would love to have those sent to me just as soon as possible as we get started. And that way we can work, be looking specifically at those areas as well. So, I'm very accessible. I think Joel will attest to this. If you email me, I'll email you right back. Or you've got my cell phone there. I'm always available to help you. So if you come across things like that, just send them to me.
Thank you, Kurt.
Bless you.
Council, from reviewing this,
Did she see
your
it?
basic cost, I think is necessary, of course, duh. I really don't think we need to go with the attorney review, because we'll have our own attorney review and advise us on these changes if we choose to make them. But the annual, what is the annual code hosting? Huh?
We already paid that.
Can I comment on that?
On what, the attorney thing?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Well, these guys have the experience directly involved in codes. I don't think our attorney necessarily does. Is that- and
I'm
that's not
so
an
sorry.
insult.
No, but it's,
Not at
okay.
all. That's their expertise, and that's not our attorney's expertise.
So, yeah.
If I could make a suggestion on that, what we do typically is we will get the preliminary draft to you. In preparing that, we come across all the editorial things that we find. Sometimes we tell cities, you don't need us to do this legal review. We can we're not doing the legal review as we prepare it, but we just can't help ourselves, basically. So we, sometimes we'll come back and say, you don't really need the legal review portion of this. Other times we'll say, yes, it's definitely a good idea to do this. So, you know, when we get to that point, we can talk about it then if you want to.
And
Go ahead.
Tony?
that's
What
also
he's
the
doing.
point, in the fact of having them take a look at it. We don't know the legals. We don't know what the state requirements are on this stuff. And, yeah, we can make recommendations, but for us to take this on and think we're the experts on it, I think we're getting way out of line,
I agree.
way off base.
I would like to make a motion.
Ma'am,
I'd like to make a motion
would you make a motion, please?
to create a workshop on the next available agenda for us to bring to the table the conflicts that we've already identified. I know that stewardship strategies bring to the table scenarios where all of us know that there's issues and holes in our ordinances, that we've had issues in the past about them. And then look at their proposals step by step and come up with a process on what we're going to ask of them as far as stages, kind of like phase 1, phase 2, whatever, what we're going to give to them and then what they're going to give back to us, and what chapters we want to tackle, in what order, and come up with a plan on our side, counter his proposal, and then look at it from that aspect on what, like a more holistic approach to this, and have it sync up with what.
I've got to just time out. This cannot possibly be a motion.
I know, I saw you roll your eyes. I'm sorry.
Can we just take a step back for a second? And
I'd like to make a motion for a workshop on this item.
I'll second that.
Okay, Jared, that'll work. Tony and Rebecca. Discussion? All in favor? All in favor, none opposed. All right, Kirk, we're going to get together here in the next couple of weeks and come back to you with a plan. I really think we're interested as a whole. I know I'm interested as in your service. I want to see it done because we've talked about this again for years, and it's time to get a professional in here to do it for us, So we'll be back in touch with you soon.
Okay, thank you all. Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, are we off?
I gotta say, I'm a little bit floored at the comment that our city attorney does not have.
Stop. We're
We're still on this agenda item, though.
That's not on the agenda item.
I don't know why you took offense by that.
Okay.
No, it's not
come on,
offense, I'm just
stop.
surprised you don't know.
Would y'all talk about this later, please?
No. Sure.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to skip back up to the consent agenda, get that out of the way. Item 6 is consent agenda. Item A, approval of the minutes from the April 15, 2021 regular meeting.
So moved.
Thank you, Rebecca. Second by Darcy. All in favor? All in favor, none opposed. Okay, did you want to go down to the Tin Man, item D?
That would be great.
Let's look at item D. Update and possible action on the Bandera Historical Commission application and designating the Tin Man Water Tower as a historical marker. Tony, you have an update for us tonight on that.
I do. So I met with Rebecca and Ray Carter, Rebecca Norton and Ray Carter. And we sent out, I took a piece out of all the research that Ray had done, and I asked Jill to send it out to the council. And the first hand-drawn is the whole complex, and it contains the 3 items, the tower, tank, and the building. The tank itself is not necessarily architecturally significant because it's a tank. It's been, I mean, as far as historic goes, they probably still build them like that today. But as a whole, it has, Ray did a lot more research than what was presented to our council about where the land came from, how it came about before it ever even got to the federal grant and funding to where it was created. And so that's going to be submitted with the application, and hopefully part of that history specific to Bandera, where the land and who made that possible on our front, and then the federal grant made it finished, will all be part of the narrative. The whole process can take quite a while, but what I need from the city today is a GPS coordinate of where they're recommending, where we're recommending the historic marker be. And if you look at the page 1 or page 41 of the whole narrative that we'll send out later, it was too big to send, but it's the corner up here, it's almost in the easement where the sidewalk and kind of corners off at the EDC parking lot. And so I just wanted to bring to here, I've talked to the mayor, I don't think it needs any council approval unless you completely object, but we need a sign off on the city side so that we are okay with the placement of the marker, and then we need the GPS coordinates to attach to that application along with her signature. And then the historic commission is gonna take care of the $100 application fee, and it can take up to a year to even approve. The deadline is May 15th, so we're in a little bit of a crunch. And then it takes another 6 months or so to get the narrative. They come up with the narrative, we don't suggest anything. They come back to us, we can give suggestions and updates at that time, and then it could be up to 2 years before they cast the marker. And then at that point, it's right now the markers are around $1,100, $1,200, and so cost may go up in 2 years, but we'll come up with figuring out how to fund it. Since it's historic and part of the walking trail and stuff, I thought maybe that might be something EDC could take an opportunity to look at. But anyway, that's where we are now. So signature from the mayor, and then as long as y'all are okay with that location for the marker, because you see the whole thing, like from this point, and we've got markers at Ohio.
You may have said that. I'm sorry if you already did, but is that on the 11th Street side or Cedar Street side?
It's right where 11th meets Cedar.
Oh, it's at the
And so
corner.
Yeah, somewhere at that corner, because it kind of, because we have the ones on the corner at Ohio, so when you're standing there, it kind of makes sense to balance. So if you're having somebody walking the corner, walking around the block, they have something to read at Ohio, they have something to read at whatever. And when they're reading it, they'll be looking at the tower, and then the complex below would contain all of it. I mean, the whole thing, but that, yeah, so.
And just for your information, council, I have signed off on 3 of these before, so there's nothing new that has, Eleanor has been the one that presented to me before, but just so that's not anything new. Comments?
I don't think we need a motion, I just wanted to.
No, I don't think we need a motion. We never have before. It's just an update.
Jerry might
Did
have a
you?
question.
Not a question, just wondering if there's any more discussion and if we need a motion.
Do you want more discussion? I mean, I don't think we need.
I'm just being polite and asking.
Okay. All right, any more comments on the placement of this historical marker, or any questions about the process or where they are?
Thank you, Tony.
Rebecca, did I miss anything?
No, you did very well. Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Just something?
Motion.
You
We don't need a motion.
You don't need a motion to designate it as a.
Repeatedly.
We already
Well, it's
accepted the
updated
project.
possible
We already did a
action.
resolution. We already approved the resolution of the project. So this is just kind of an update on where we are with the application that's due on the 15th.
I mean, the action would have been, oh, no, heck no, y'all just put everything where you're going, I guess.
We missed
Yeah.
that headline, so.
Okay, guys, can we get back to number A, please? Discussion and possible action on the 2021 hotel occupancy tax applications that came in prior to the deadline.
So, sorry.
Well, we've heard other discussion, I've buried mine in here somewhere. And we've discussed each one. Quite frankly, I don't think any of the requests are excessive, but we need to take them one by one.
I think the consent. Can I make a motion?
Yes, ma'am.
I'll make a motion to approve the request by the Chamber of Commerce funding Buckfest through hotel occupancy tax for $3,620.
Christine?
We all
Second.
seconded at the same time, so pick one of them.
Discussion? All in favor? All in favor, none opposed.
May I
Okay.
roll with it?
Would you like to make another motion?
Sure. I'd like to make a motion to approve Riding on Faith Rodeo Summer Series in the amount of $9,000 from hotel occupancy tax funds.
I'll second.
Jerry seconded, or Tony and
Discussion?
Christine probably.
All in favor? All in favor, none opposed. Rebecca?
Like to make a motion to approve the $5,000 request from Bandera Business Association from hotel occupancy funds to fund Cowboys on Main.
Second? Do I have a second?
I'm
Christine?
For how much?
Thank you.
sorry. How much?
5,000.
I couldn't hear.
She's already seconded. All in favor? Discussion, I'm sorry, discussion. All in favor? All in favor, none opposed. Okay.
And I have one more, if I may.
Yes, you may.
I'm going to go ahead and do the Pro Rodeo Series as one motion, funding $7,000 for Memorial Day and $7,000 for Labor Day from Hotel Occupancy Tax Fund.
Second that.
Jerry seconds. Discussion?
I have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
So this is Memorial Day next year,
And Labor Day.
okay, and it's reimbursement for, okay. Because this one already happened and she said she wasn't, okay, all right, that's all, thank you.
I think it's got.
And let me
years.
add, in my conversation with her yesterday,
These are both 2021
yeah,
events.
they've yet to come. They got canceled last year,
So they have to submit a post-event when they request it.
but
So-
she's,
So what I heard her say tonight was that she had the Memorial Day money from
From last
2020 that they were gonna use for Labor Day, and the conference didn't happen. So she wasn't gonna ask for any Memorial Day money this year. But I don't disagree, it's an association that. okay,
She
I
did
get it.
explain something about that, but I think she did articulate what that fund was going to be used for.
It was other expenses.
Yes.
right, because she didn't get funded by the city because it's a post-event.
Right,
so it
she
must
had
have been the
EDC
EDC
money.
fund.
Right.
Okay, got it, thank you.
Further discussion? All in favor? All in favor, none opposed. Great, council, we'll get those out
And before we.
as soon as we get that post report. Yes,
May I
ma'am?
just comment before we wrap up this agenda item? I think that there might have been a few events that didn't get when to submit applications, and then obviously we discussed in the workshop, James needing to get his updated and the back up information, documentation submitted, so if we could just, I don't think we need to meet on this again next week, but figure out what, we're gonna do moving forward for the rest of those folks.
So that leaves us, I mean, that's a little over, it's 31,620 for total, and so that, with the 58,000, right, isn't that what you said we had?
Something like, yeah.
So it leaves us with 27,000, just so that's on the record unfunded, so if anybody out there is wondering.
But,
how much we got
too,
left.
We're still
that number's gonna
accumulating.
change every month as we collect more hot funds.
Right.
That's our
But I
main,
just meant as of right now.
Right now.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
as of March 31st. Okay, let's see, that's that one, and that one, and that one. Item C, approving the $3,800 for upgrades to the drive-up window in the utility department to better serve utility customers. Darcy,
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the $3,800 for upgrades to the drive-up window in the utility department to better serve utility customers.
May I second?
Rebecca seconds, discussion. Tony?
And this is coming directly out of utility funds? Where's this money coming from?
We were looking at it, it's
Did you hear the
coming from,
question? Sorry.
the utility, water and the wastewater and the office, it's coming from repairs and, it's in the budget anyway, we're just move it around.
So we already have that.
We already have it in the budget, yes.
I'm sorry.
Hmm?
Wasn't it out of the court?
No, we can't do it out of the
Whatever.
county.
It
Yeah, it's
doesn't
coming,
matter. We
well,
have the money
that's
for
the,
it.
this is the drive-through window, which really court has very little to do with, so they are funding the security at the front of the building.
So
Yes,
just
Tony?
want to clarify, the bids we had last time, we funded that one with court money that had to do with the courts, and this one was like, we were kind of sketchy about it not coming out of the court fund, which is why it's on a separate agenda. I was thinking that might be the meeting you wanted.
Oh, maybe you weren't there.
I'll use that excuse.
Yeah, I was
That
thinking,
was
it-
it.
but I was just thinking it was you weren't here, maybe because there was a meeting you weren't here.
Yeah.
So I was.
Oh.
Okay, Further discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Mhm.
All in favor, none opposed. Thank you. Okay, looks like we're down to
E.
item E. Discussion and possible action on a contract with MVBA for collections of unpaid utility accounts and court fees. You want to come on up?
May I come forward?
He's like, finally, it's my turn.
Tough crowd, I love it. And I know you guys are tired, so thank you so much. Honorable Mayor, Commissioners, my name is Ivy J. O'Leary. I'm with the offices of McCurry, South of Bracken Alley, out of Round Rock, Texas. I work very closely with your judges in Bandera County as I'm contracted for the collection of fines and fees in courts. So we're working very closely with them in Medina County, Menard, Mason County, City of Divine. We're very familiar with the collections of fines and fees. So thank you for, Mayor, for contacting me. And Judge Towers has been trying to get me to come in, and it's between COVID and a number of things that have occurred during the process and an ice storm. You know, I just can't figure out what else we're going to go through next, but praise God we got through it. Even myself, having caught COVID back in March, I was in a coma for 20 days, in a hospital for 30 days, but God was good, and I'm through it, and I'm excited to be here. So I'm excited to be alive for starters. But anyway,
Me too.
our law firm specializes in the area of collections of not only fines and fees and accounts receivable, but property taxes as well. I'm here for the fines and fees portion in the receivables because back during COVID, a number of entities went through some really difficult financial times. Everything shut down, to the point that the Texas Department of Public Safety and the state issued orders for officers not to issue traffic violations from February through almost August, almost the entire year. And a lot of courts and a lot of entities need this revenue. And that's where I come in. Because of course, a lot of that happened while I was gone. But I woke up to such a surprise that all of that was going on. So, nevertheless, Judge Towers had been on me to come talk to you. He said, Ivy, I think we need something like this in place so that you can help us generate some revenue for the things that we need to take care of in the court and in the city. So I'm here to offer our services, and why this is a great service is because the fines and fees portion is at no cost to you. The code, the Article 3001.03 Code of Criminal Procedure provides for the ability for us to add a 30% fee to a person's traffic violation that is delinquent, not your current. Now, what happens is, just in a nutshell, let me just break this out because I know you guys are tired. When a person gets a traffic violation of $100, and don't pay it, there's obviously court costs and other fees incurred. We charge 30% on that $100, and we collect $130. What we do, in turn, is send your court, or the city, the $130 so that you can clear that traffic violation. Because a lot of times, sometimes happens, there's fees or court costs that didn't get paid or didn't get added to the account when it was being produced. So we make sure that from that 30%, the court and the city gets all of their money. So when I tell you that it's at no cost to you, we do all of your mailings, we pay for all the postage, all of the overhead from calling. We have the personnel to make calls to your defendants. And I want to definitely emphasize that they're defendants for the traffic violations, they're not criminals. So they get treated individually as human beings with grace and mercy. If the court decides, guys, can we put them on a payout agreement, let them pay 50% up front and let them pay it out, or with somebody local that needs assistance and needs a little time payout, we can make that happen. We will work with your court as you direct, right? So we don't do anything without your consultation and your approval. Because in the end, you will never read about us or about yourself in the paper over something we've done that was not right or didn't fall graciously upon you guys, the court and the city. So our goal is to generate revenue, collect those unpaid traffic violations that are out there that need to get paid. And as well with the what we do with the accounts receivable, obviously, I don't know what you have. We normally submit one. Some entities have utilities to collect, some do not. But oftentimes, they'll come back and say, gosh, we haven't collected this, and they found something from out of nowhere. And call us and say, can you guys collect this for us? Does this fall under that category? So we're covered, and we have the ability to do that kind of work for you. I think the thing that makes me more excited is everything that's going on in Bandera. And one of the things that our law firm prides itself is plugging into the community, being a part of it. Because, in the end, we're all in this together. And so we would love to be a part of your community. We'd love the opportunity to serve you as best we can to generate some much needed revenue as we have for other entities. Theoretically, I think I just got a report recently from the city from Menard County. We were like 30-40% over for what they estimated the first quarter in collections, which was huge because obviously they were starving. It was really tough to just get heaters and generators for some of the health care people in the area, folks that needed help.
I have a question.
Yes,
So, okay, so say there's a total unpaid court costs and everything of 100, and then we tack on the 130, and you said that you collect the
we
130.
tacked 30.
We tack the 30, so the total's 130.
Right.
So that's paid to you, you turn that over to us,
Right.
and then, so how do y'all get paid? I
Well,
missed
from the
that.
30%, we charge 30% on the amount.
Right, but then I thought I heard you say you give the whole 130 to us.
Yeah, we send the whole 130 because sometimes in
Because we have
courts,
extra key-
they have
How
certain
do we get money
fees.
back to you? That's what I want to know, how do we bill it back?
The city just issues us a check for
And
the
then we give
difference.
you, give you money for 30?
What's left of
The
30%.
balance.
What's left?
The balance
I
of
think,
That's the part of it.
yeah.
of the $30.
Yeah.
So if there was a $5 balance that wasn't accounted for, we get $25 back.
Thank you.
Council, couple of things. Did this go to our attorney for review before it
That's
came
what
to
I was
us?
gonna
Because
ask as well.
there's several mistakes in here, like.
The
Castroville
contract
and
wasn't reviewed by our attorney?
Okay, then I'd like to table
Who
this,
received
please.
it?
I think this was in the works before
I
I'd like to-
I give it to Jill.
Okay.
I delivered the
Okay.
contract and all that information.
When did this,
Thank
when
you.
did we get this?
Yeah.
When did we get this?
Oh,
Do you know?
sometime back. It was before the ice storm, I'll never forget that.
Okay.
It was
Well,
like the
I-
day before the ice storm.
Okay, well, I'd like to table this, I'd like to send it to our attorney, and also I'd like Jeanette to be able to talk to you about her
The need.
experience with collections through the courts. Before we make a decision, I think she's got some information that could be really relative to our discussion. Jerry?
I do have some questions, so I'd like
Okay.
to go ahead and ask them.
Of course, sir.
And this may involve Jill, if she can. How many or how much do we have outstanding in unpaid utility accounts and court fees? Do you know, approximate, just a feel for it?
I asked Jeanette, and I think she said, this was months and months ago too, but I think it was like 35 or 40,000, but I'm not.
How much?
35 or 40,000.
And that's just in court?
I won't hold you to it.
Right, and then, but we didn't
That's
really have
just
a
for
time
what?
frame either,
I-
because it kept getting.
That
put
was
on
just
the
for
back burner, and
court.
never-
Court.
That's not utilities.
Is this utilities also?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, sorry, I missed
They're
missed
two
that.
separate
Doesn't
contracts,
include
one's for-
outstanding
Okay.
utilities.
Right, so there was two different numbers, it's a court and then utility. But when this came to me the first time, I gave it to Suzanne and it didn't make it onto an agenda. So when I asked Jeanette to run numbers and I asked Keely to run numbers for the two separate accounts, Jeanette wasn't a big fan of this process and wanted to talk to Suzanne about it, which she did, and she also talked to Terry about it this week or today, maybe even as well. So then it kind of didn't go anywhere because nobody was really pushing it to go to council. So then the collection agency, so it was just put on hold for all these months. Then he went to Darcy while she was at work in Medina, so then Darcy asked to put it on this next agenda. So this has just been kind of hanging around because nobody had really wanted to move forward with it until Darcy asked for it to be on the agenda at the last meeting. So I have no numbers for real numbers, unless Terry does. I know he was speaking with Jeanette about it. I don't know if they got into numbers or not.
We did not get into numbers. We checked into with the CCP, then that's where the 30% comes from. And that was,
No quote.
we confirmed.
I think that's important for us to know before we decide whether to sit collection agents on our citizens.
Well, then the other
Let's-
question was
And
how
how
far
fast,
back
and I'm
are we
not
gonna
saying
go?
it's not warranted, don't take me wrong here, but I would like to see how much is outstanding out there, how past due are they, and what other remedies we may have. I just don't like the initial thought of this so much.
Well, and then the other thing that Terry and I talked about today too, and I've talked about with Jeanette and utilities, is how far back are we gonna go? 4 years? You know,
That's
so
why-
before we can run numbers, I need to know what time frame we're looking at. So, you know, I need more
All
details before I can
time.
give answers.
Just kidding.
And how delinquent will they be before they get turned over?
It's usually 60 to 90 days, the court normally decides. So we don't get anything till after it's 60 days, minimum.
And one last question, can't the courts issue a subpoena for failure to pay court fines?
Issue
Huh?
They issue warrants.
Yeah, or, I'm sorry.
It's a lot more expensive
So,
than 30%.
what are we solving by
Keeping someone out
trying to
of
go after
jail,
them? And
maybe?
if the court isn't able to collect something through issuing a warrant, then certainly I'm not gonna even pick up the phone on you.
Well, I think one of the things that this does is it's not as if they're getting a threatening letter. You know, most times, a lot of folks come pay because they received a letter from a law firm that says, you have an outstanding property violation with the city of Bandera. This is your ticket number, this is the amount, this is the offense, and this is the contact information to call the court or call us and we can take payment for you.
Well, and I understand that, and I'm willing
keeps
to,
going.
but for us to go after the court fees, I'm not sure about that one. Like I say, especially when they can issue a warrant, why do you think we would be any more effective than if a judge, by issuing a warrant for you, can't get it done? Really, do we really think that calling these people and sending letters is gonna do
Well,
anything?
one of the things that
No answer.
Rebecca's had her hand
No,
up.
Jerry wants him to answer his question, and then you
The
can,
answer's gonna be subjective, so what, I mean, it's like,
Yeah, everything is anyway.
I mean, I know real answers, because that's kind of my job.
who do you want to call on first? We got hands up, come on.
Rebecca was
I'm
first.
done.
Rebecca had her hand up first. Are you done,
Okay.
Jerry?
I'm done.
Thank you.
So two things that I would be curious to learn more about, and whether that's tonight or at our next meeting, like what really are the drawbacks of this? Because if I forgot to pay a ticket accidentally, I'd rather get a letter saying, hey, you better pay this than a warrant for my arrest, I'll assure you that. And then the other piece is, I'd be curious if there's any kind of real data that you can share with us from other cities to show us, without, of course, exclude anything confidential that you need to, but to give us some real numbers. These were their outstanding accounts, and in 6 months, this is what we collected for this community. Because I think, as much as anybody, we need our money in our general fund, in our utility fund, in our court fund for us to operate. And people need to pay their, what they owe,
That's right.
right? I know I do.
Okay. Tony?
So, from a compassionate standpoint, I don't see any reason not to enter this. I see this, and correct me if I'm wrong, I see this as entering a contract into a vendor that costs us absolutely nothing. That if we've done our due diligence by sending letters for 90 days, spending our money, our letters, our letterhead, our regular, you're 30 days past due, you're this, you're that, which I know we don't do for utilities. We just turn it off on a Friday at 3:45, or we used to, and people can go the entire weekend because they were at work and don't even know their water's off. So I know that for sure. I don't know if we do that anymore, but we've done it in the past. And so if we do our due diligence for 90 days trying to get money paid, whether it be from the court perspective or whether it be from utilities, if we're entered into a contract with this vendor, all we have to do is send a letter or whatever, do collections on this. From that point forward, it's nothing off of us. I mean, no money at all. It's turned over to them to collect it, and we get all of our money. What it doesn't do is have somebody stopped for a tail light out and have a warrant issued using local resources, local taxpayer money to file a warrant on somebody, and then have a constable go out and serve a warrant on owing the city $30 in court, or $100 or something like that. From a taxpayer's perspective, it's a lot more expensive. Please, one more thing. And my last point is, if we were to enter into this contract, I would like it to be an at-will contract, meaning we could, it sounds like we turn over to him whatever we want, even if we're in contract, and we're under no obligation that we meet a deadline or a threshold on how many we turn over to him. He's just there as an at-will contract that says, we're having trouble collecting this. I don't see any negatives. So that's my speech.
If you don't mind, because, Will, we've updated our warrant process. Could you, our collections, it's going better? We're filing them with somebody else now?
Well, Jeanette, when they send out multiple letters, I can tell you how many before it finally gets to the warrant phase. They're late, they don't come to court. She sends out several notices. She goes above and beyond and then bends over backwards, in my opinion. And that's the non-compassionate police officer part of me. She does above and beyond on that front. When it does end up going to warrant, there's more fees and everything else. They end up getting arrested eventually, maybe. We go through this sometimes several cycles with these people. I have in my past, with my years as a warrant officer with the city of Longview, been very resistant to the collection aspect of this. I do see that there are some advantages to it. However, the drawback I see is that many of these places, once you enter into a contract with them, we may arrest these people down the road, arrest somebody coming through town that had a warrant from 10 years ago. They've straightened up, they're headed to a job interview, they don't want to lose that job. They say, hey, I can't afford to go to jail. Can we go down here to the court and pay my fine so I don't go to jail? Which I'm all for, because we don't want to take them to jail and have them lay in jail for 24 hours. We'd rather have the money. They go down here and pay the money. Well, the collection agency is still entitled to 30 or whatever % because they've had their hand in it. I don't know if that's the case in this case.
That's a good point.
But that is something that has been dealt with in the past, and then a lot of times, anything they've touched, they're owed a part to. And like I said, I don't know if that's the case here, but
May we hear about that point? Because that's a good point.
Let me answer two things for you. I know you have difficulty with sending someone a letter from an attorney or collection agency. We live in a world today where you can run up a credit card for $15,000, buy a 60-inch television, buy furniture, and either pay pennies on the dollar or have no consequence. That's our society today. But that doesn't get the bills paid for the city of Bandera.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, on the warrant side, some of the things that are available along with this is something called Omni. And Omni, what it is with the state of Texas. And what it does, it puts a hole in their driver's license. They can't get auto insurance. They can't get their driver's license renewed. They can't get their inspection sticker. So, those kinds of things our goal is to help people become fiduciarily responsible. We can give them all the reason in the world why not to pay. That's why we give checks like they're gravy. So the reality is, the reason the firm would get their 30%, right? If it's a special case, I can tell you, we've had cases where they say, can we just forego the 30%? This person really can't afford that. We've done that. We're not opposed to doing that, right? All you have to do is ask, right? The Bible says, you have not because you ask not. So we're willing to work with people. Our goal is to help folks become fiduciarily responsible. Now, in the cases where, we get paid our 30%, well, guess what? We have postage, man hours calling, we have paper, toner, mail outs, we have inherent overhead costs that you no longer have, right? But we've exerted those efforts to get that person to come pay. So in the event that they get caught, pulled over, and had a warrant, well, that's fine, but, if you're opposed to MVPA or any agency getting paid, they did the work, right? It just happened to come out because the person had to tell them. I can't tell you how many times I hear judges at the conferences say, well, this person, paid the fee because he had a license plate was missing or light was out. They just happened to accidentally stop the person for something else. It wasn't because of the ticket.
Oh, you still
Go ahead,
haven't been
Darcy.
called on.
So, I work on costs, on jail costs, on warrant costs and stuff like that. That's part of my everyday job. So it costs the county really, but all that ends up leaking into the city. You end up leaking into the taxpayer anyway to issue a warrant. Then it costs $45 a day to the taxpayer to house an inmate. So if you have a ticket for $100, which none of them are $100, but if you have a ticket for $100, that's only 2 days in jail that, we as Joe and Jane taxpayer just paid more for housing the inmate that shouldn't be in jail with somebody that's violent or somebody that, has a real charge instead of, some kind of ticket, some kind of traffic violation like speeding. Now, when Ivy was talking about having the holds and stuff like that on their license or not being able to renew their license, that happened to me. That happened to me when I moved back to the area because I didn't return library books. That's not them putting the hold, that's the state putting the hold because I actually had a warrant for my arrest because I didn't return library books. Yes, I had a Class C misdemeanor ticket that I didn't know about because the ticket never came back, never came to my house.
Oh my gosh.
I wasn't notified. I actually had a warrant for my arrest, could have gone to jail. I worked at the prison there, so I could have gone to jail with the prison inmates that got out. So if you see, I'd much rather have a letter come from a company and not have a warrant for my arrest. It ended up costing me $350 for these library books that I didn't return. For the ticket, still had to pay for the library books. And my license was revoked, so they could have got me for driving without a license also. So all of this could be stopped by using a company like that. Plus, we're bringing in revenue. Like Tony said, there's really no negative, there's no downside.
Tony had her hand up before me, though. I don't know if you were, Tony did?
I think I already spoke, but I did want one other thing with what Will had said about I think that the fact that the costs have been incurred, just like court costs, I mean, we've contracted out someone that has incurred costs to try to get the money, and if by chance they get pulled over and have ultimately a warrant was issued, they should pay all the incurred costs.
That's exactly what I was gonna say, and one other thing.
So I think that's all.
So, you were about to call on me, right?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure. That, I was just ditto that for Tony, and the other piece I would like to see is, how the policy within the court is gonna be coupled with this contract. So, I don't wanna just change one piece, but leave the other piece hanging and not make the appropriate adjustments, because if we are gonna if someone were to come in, then you would want to tack on that 30% fee if we're going to owe it and stuff like that. So, thanks.
Could I, go ahead,
No,
please.
go ahead.
No, please, because mine's gonna be a question about not how we do this, but something else.
That's why I'd like to see some numbers, because one, where is these collections coming, where are these past due accounts coming from? What kind of people are we talking about?
What?
Are these, well, you can laugh, but
No, I'm
this is
just-
very well an elderly couple that can't afford to pay. That's
It's
what I'd like to
anybody.
We
see.
get to choose who we send to them. They don't take all of our
Well,
delinquent accounts.
That's why I would like to
That's
see
not
some
right.
numbers. I would like to know, how much do we have
It's anybody
outstanding?
who has
Is
a
it
ticket.
really worth going after these people, even though it doesn't cost us anything? I guess I'm a little bit more compassionate than others,
Oh, so sweet.
that's all.
Okay, but
And I don't see anything wrong with getting these answers, because I think it's important to know.
I think it sounds like we're doing our due diligence on the city side, and we, if say we have a policy that's for the next 90 days, we send out letters, countless letters, whatever, and they don't respond, I just don't see any negative to turn it over to somebody, no matter how, whether it's one account or 70. I just don't think that we choose which ones to turn over if we think it's somebody that's, that's avoiding us and.
And
But
it's,
if turning off their utilities doesn't work, what is that gonna do?
Well, that's not,
I don't
yeah.
think you can get any
Why not?
tougher than that.
I think utilities is just a small percentage if for some reason, if like maybe they left and they.
Do we know that?
So what if, that's what I'm saying, it doesn't matter if we know that or not. To me, if it's
Sure.
money they owe us, then they still owe it to us and it
To
doesn't
me, it
cost us
matters.
anything to turn over. But I think the majority of them are traffic. So,
You think, but that's
Okay.
why we don't know. So you can't say that, because you don't know.
I don't think it matters.
You don't have an idea.
I don't think it matters.
And, does that mean just because we've turned it over collection, the court is no longer gonna issue a warrant? I doubt it.
Can I
And
answer
what's
that
gonna
question?
come
'Cause I know
first,
he's
the
adamant
90
about
days
this
or the
whole
court?
issue. Our goal is not for this thing to go to warrant status. Because not only does it go into additional cost, they've already got additional cost inherent for not paying the traffic violation on time. Okay? There's things that should happen within the court system, that is, they issue what is known as a 30-day letter when it's coming up to 30 days and they haven't paid their ticket. A postcard goes out that says, "Dear Mr. Johnson, you have a traffic violation in the city of Bandera. After 30 days, you will begin to incur court costs and fees for non-payment of this traffic violation. Will you contact the court and set up payment?" Okay, that doesn't mean that they won't work with them or have a payment arrangement. One of the things that we pride ourselves in doing every April is we do something called a warrant roundup, okay? And what they are postcards and publications in the local paper that notify the defendant that you have a traffic violation pending. If you don't pay this, or you don't make arrangements to get this paid, a warrant could be issued regarding this traffic violation. So it's not as if, what you don't want is it to do that, because that person doesn't agree to incur the costs. So what we try to do is try to avert that thing going to warrant status. So it doesn't do that, right? So our goal is to help you collect these accounts. And if you're gonna go back, my background is in accounting. So if you're gonna go back, I would suggest you go back and do an analysis of what's been in the court, what hasn't been collected, not only the last 90 days, okay? Find out how much money you could have had to operate your city over that period of time. Because I assure you, that number will astound you, okay? Compassion or no compassion, there's gotta be compassion, right? The goal is to try to bring them to a point of meeting the fiduciary responsibility. We all have the ability to speed or not speed. But now, the system says, well, because you have a great job, you have to pay the $200. But because you don't have, because you're a sacker at HEB, you only get to pay $50. Well, at what point do we figure out what's fair? Is it fair that this person pays $50 for having the ability to control their speed, just like this other person does? So there's a lot of variables. And we can find a million reasons why not to do something, right? We can do that. That's easy. Can we find a reason that we do need to do it? Because without these monies, you don't get the opportunity to provide better services for the people, for your taxpayers, and the people in your community. It's a two-edged sword.
Darcy?
I have 3 things. One, the utilities aspect. The utilities are gonna be cut off for people that don't pay. So if I don't pay my water's gonna get cut off already. So I'm gonna pay my bill if I can pay my bill. If I can't pay my bill, then I wait until I get the money to pay it, right? So it just makes sense. It's just rational to understand that the only utilities that are likely to be turned over to Ivy's company is gonna be the people that skip out, that run up a bill and they leave town and they have no intention on paying it. So I don't think that's a compassion issue at all. Next thing is talking to Ivy and because we use them in Medina County, all the JPs use them in Medina County and they absolutely love them. They rave about them. I constantly hear about it in Commissioner's Court. They love them. And so something that I've learned about MVBA is that we can pull phone calls. So anytime somebody has a complaint, they call up, they say, hey, those bill collectors that you sicked on me, they were a real jerk. Well, Jill can say, oh, I'm sorry about that, ma'am, let me check into it. She can call Ivy. Ivy will pull the phone call from the actual time that they talk to them, and she can listen to the phone call, or T-Bird can listen to the phone call and hear if that person was a jerk or not. If that person was a jerk, they will take care of it. So if that person's not a jerk, Jill can call them back and say, hey, I was actually able to listen to that phone call. I thought they were professional, whatever, however she wants to handle it. And I just want to say again that Medina County absolutely loves them. From what I've heard here as well from a couple of the judges, they love them here as well. I can't say I've talked to all 4 judges here because I haven't.
Go ahead.
I wanted to make sure that Jerry understood from his comment before. I agree that we need to see the numbers, not only our numbers in the rears, but also the examples from other cities. And as far as your comment about the compassion thing, the reason I disagree with you in who are these people, because we can't be subjective and select. I don't think it's right to be subjective and select unless they're already working with a payment structure. Then who's to say somebody's not going to go, oh, that's my cousin, and we're not going to send them down that road, so that's why I really would want to see the policy very clear and how it's all being carried out and how that couples with the contract in the coordinated effort to collect the funds. We already heard about the payment structure. So whether it's a teenager without a job or an elderly couple, you are always talking about treating people fairly and the same. We can't discriminate based on age, and it's not a matter of compassion. I think the compassionate piece here is that they're given the opportunity to structure a comfortable payment plan without the threat of jail time. So I think the whole thing is kind of a step in the right direction.
Just to be clear, I heard that to table to send to attorney and then get the numbers. So do you want the numbers by year, like how much we have for 2020, 2019? How far back are we gonna want these numbers so I can get the right data?
We need to go back more than 90 days. I think everything
No, I
we
know
have
that.
outstanding.
I'm saying years, how many years back?
I don't know.
I would say 4 years. I think that's what, you
4
can go
years?
back tickets, am I correct? Ivy, you can go back 4 years on tickets.
Tony?
I was gonna say, Will may remember, I don't know who all was around, but I think it was before I was on council, but we did this not long ago. I thought you were on council. What was the What was the, I mean, when they came back and did a report on what the percentage was that they returned, and within 30 to 60 days, some of those people did, I mean, it was astounding. I was shocked, because I was sitting in the audience when the council just got somebody to do it, and within 60 days, I mean, it was over 50%. From what I remember, but I don't know if those numbers are somewhere to be found to prove an actual in Bandera that we submitted this much for collections and this much was returned. It was, I don't know if that was actually written out in the minutes, but it was definitely discussed in the city
I don't
council.
remember exactly what the numbers were.
I've only been back 11 years, so it has to be somewhere around there.
It hasn't been in my time, so it was in between.
So I was on council, so yeah, somewhere just.
Jerry?
Just to make it clear, I'm all for people paying their bills, especially when it comes to tax, anything that can cause my taxes to increase. But at the same time, I think that we need to try to look at, is this really a solution for one? Because like I said, if it doesn't work to turn the utilities off, what does?
It's not that
You
though.
know,
Okay. Done.
go ahead.
Christine?
Well, if our county is already doing this and they're seeing a benefit from it, then clearly it works.
We might.
And so, I don't see how it would not work for the city when it's working for the county. So I think that it's something that the county's already proven that it's working and they're seeing money coming back in that's out there, then we would see the same thing.
Thank you.
Well, I can see an advantage there too, because we've got other areas where people owe us money, like EDC loans, that I think we definitely should go after those. So, yeah, it probably is a good thing, and it gives us an opportunity to go back and collect some of this other from EDC loans.
I'd like to make a motion.
I need to ask a question. Well, okay, then I'll ask my question, but it'll be for clarification.
I'd like,
Can I say one more thing? I think having something in place is very important, right? And I think what I'd like to stress is one of the things that you mentioned was, we only get what you want us to collect. We don't just go pull a file arbitrarily. What happens is you run a system, I believe it's INCO, is that right, Joe? Okay. So we're very familiar with that program. And INCO has the ability to produce a number of reports for you, including the delinquent accounts. So what happens is, in the process, we get a file from Bandera County, and it lands in our system, and it is a secure FTP site, okay? Then we make a complete list of the accounts that we received from Bandera County. At that point, we send the list back to your municipal court and the judge to approve those accounts, to receive letters, phone calls, etc. We don't do anything just arbitrarily, okay? The report gets pulled, it's produced by your court clerk, we get it electronically, we put it in a format so that we can do our mail outs and all that in calls. Now, why it's also important is because by the time this account becomes delinquent after 30 days, you also run the risk of not finding the people. I think Darcy made that very clear, right? People move, you find that in the utilities, right? People go so far as to put utilities in their sons and daughters' name to get utilities started again. So we have resources called skip tracing to try to locate the defendant, because some of the defendants after 60 or 90 days are very difficult to find. Makes it hard to collect.
I'd like to make a motion.
Sure.
I would like to table this to our first meeting in June and ask the staff to recommend a policy of number of days delinquent when they are unable to establish contact.
May I just interrupt you to second your motion to table?
No, this was all, I wanted this as a part, I mean, I want this.
As a part,
information.
okay, I apologize.
I wanted it on record.
Okay.
I'll second that.
I haven't finished.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was cut off.
I'm sorry.
I would like to make a motion that we table this until the first meeting of June and ask that the staff recommend the number of days that an account was delinquent when they are unable to establish contact or an agreement. And I would also like to see at that meeting the amount currently delinquent over the last 4 years of court costs and utilities.
Okay, I'll second that.
Okay, for discussion purposes. We're not Castroville. And you've got two conflicting, I'm gonna send this to the attorney, there's two conflicting statements in here. On page 2, number 4, you say that upon consultation and agreement by both parties hereto, MBVA LLC, may employ an attorney at its expense to make recommendation, blah, blah, blah. Then on page 7, where Castroville, the last sentence says, no attorneys, law clerks, or paralegals will be performing work under this contract. So those two are conflicting to one another, so I think we need to get those straightened out.
Yes, ma'am, I'll look at that, I'll see what was.
But again,
May we vote? Please.
as long as I get the stuff straightened out.
We're voting on tabling it to the.
I know,
You
but it's
do?
up for discussion.
Oh,
and I
okay,
want this
okay.
out there.
Was that it, is all I'm saying?
Yeah, we had to correct the contract. All in favor? All in favor, none opposed. Okay. Item 8, requests and announcements. A, request by council to place items on an agenda. Darcy.
Discuss some possible action on, the International Building Code. Updating the International Building Code. And, I'd like to request that the city go out for bids from other codifying companies, not just the one we heard from tonight.
Good deal. Anybody else? Anything specific right now?
No, well, the
Okay.
only other thing,
Huh?
that might not be for this, it's just about the second meeting in June.
That's the announcement.
For announcements?
Yeah,
Okay,
it'll be good for announcements.
okay.
Okay, item B, announcement by council.
Well, Suzanne and I will both not be in town for the second meeting in June, so I don't know if that's, no, we won't be together.
I meant for us.
I'd rather go with her. She's going to
I meant for
Florida.
us, like with the Ball Scouts, you know?
So that's June 17th. I don't know, I mean, if you want to, we could just, I mean, I don't know, if we can skip it or if we need to move it, add it to the next month or whatever.
You wanna,
I'm going to be gone for like more than the second half of June, so y'all can feel free to have a meeting without me when she's only gone for a few days. So I'm just saying we can't have it, our regular meeting on the second Thursday of June because Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem are both gone. Handle it as you will. Thank you.
I can shoot out some dates and see who's available if you'd like.
Now, Jill's not going to be here either, so.
I can email out dates and then see who's available.
Run the city if you're all gone.
For real.
Okay, yes, Jerry.
A motion. I move to adjourn.
Thank you. Rebecca,
I'll
second.
You're late.
Discussion, all in favor? All in favor, none opposed. All right, good night, guys. It is
Thank you for your